Okay, so like I was saying, when you take Daniel 9 and you mix that together with, never mind. You add a quarter of a cup of Nephilim, and then you mix it together. You got a recipe for confusion. We're live? Can't tell with this, but okay. All right. Shalom, everyone. Welcome to watching your rabbi put lotion on his hands. Okay. That's why we're live now, so you can see that. Okay. All right. Well, welcome. We're going to have everybody kind of come on in. I'm sure you guys will want to congregate under the heaters. There are several of them scattered around, so there are warmer spots than others. All things considered, it's not so bad. It was much colder this morning, so I'm glad we were able to do the John readings over in the other building. All right, so we got Rob Wyatt there on the live stream desk. Okay, you got everybody on there? How many you got going right now? Just 60, okay, good. All right, so real quickly up front, just a reminder with the announcements here. So because of the weather and the way things went today, which I actually thought went pretty good, we're going to do the final day of readings tomorrow. We'll do that in the dining hall like we did today, just so you'll know, if you came over here, we'll send you over there anyway. And then we'll do our afternoon things in here. Actually, the youth are the only ones that are going to be in here practicing their presentation. All right. Wonderful. Okay, so this is our open Midrash. So pretty much in anything goes, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to answer every question. It means that we may redirect some of those towards teachings or some other thing, but we'll do the best we can to try to answer anything that we can. It's the ground rules. As we're going through, we're going to respect that it's my choice to answer or not answer, and it may not be because I don't want to answer for arbitrary reasons. It may be that it's a subject that needs a lot more explanation that can be done in a few minute sound bite, so to speak, so we may have to skip some of those things. I'd like us, if we are going to have a discussion or somewhat of a debate over what a verse is trying to say or what a verse says, that the first ground rule that we have is that we have to first agree what it actually says. In other words, the limit to what it says. Because there are a lot of things that we have been taught over the years that a verse says that the words actually aren't in the verse, but people have added additional understanding, meaning, or intent to whatever was said. And, it's like in Revelation, this all came because many years ago when I first did this, in Revelation chapter 20, I kind of explain where this came from. Give you an example. And in verse 12, it says, verse 11, it says, "And I saw a great white throne, and him who was sitting on it, from whose face the earth and heaven fled away, and no place was found for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before the throne, and books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged from what was written in the books according to their works." And a person raised their hand to ask a question about this and said, "I have a question about Revelation 20, the judgment of the damned." And I said, hold on a second. It doesn't say that. Now, it may or may not mean that based on your interpretation, and we can discuss that, and I may discuss things, but just let's understand that nowhere in that verse did it say that. And that's kind of where we're going to be sometimes when you ask a question or you make a comment. I may even agree with your interpretation, but before I do, I may get you first to have to agree with me that it's not actually what it says. And then we could talk about why we think it's what it means or what is the intention there. Is that fair? We good? All right? Because that really can tend to be problematic. I think we're all tired and had enough of speculation being taught as fact. Yes? No? All right? Because that's where those things come from. People going, well, in Revelation 20, the judgment of the damned. Well, hold on. That's somebody's speculation. Whether it's right or not is a whole different thing, but it doesn't say it. Okay? Now, and I don't think that's what it is anyway. But the point is, it doesn't say it. All right? All right, so where are the mics and who's got them? Okay, Daniel's got one. Do we have a second one also to go around? What do you point? Oh, it's over here. All right, Grayson will take the other one. All right, so the way this will work, we'll try to rotate between left, right of the room and also the live stream as far as giving you an opportunity to ask your questions. And, of course, the only other ground rule is being polite, okay? Now, this is not just a Ask the Rabbi session necessarily. If somebody makes a point and you'd like to chime in on that point, that's great. Raise your hand and we'll kind of allow that to go a little bit. I'll kind of make sure to keep it where it needs to be, and we can go through it from that point as well. Who would like to get us started? Okay. Michelle in the back had her hand up.
Hi, Rabbi. I still had a question from this morning, from our service this morning. And
I don't take questions after the fact. We covered. I'm teasing.
No, I was just wondering, in 1338, where Kepha Shimon had denied Yeshua, would it be correct to say that when we're not doing the things we're supposed to be doing, in a sense, we're denying him also?
Well, what you're doing is you're denying your relationship that you think you have or that you're claiming to have. Actually, in 1338, he hadn't done it yet. He was just being told he would do it. Okay, so in John, we're talking about John from the readings this morning. John 13:38, Yeshua answered and said, "Shall you lay down your life for me?" And Peter answers, had answered, of course, I'll lay down my life for you. And he says, "Well, really?" He says, "I say to you truly that the cock shall not crow at all until you have denied me 3 times." And so he was told, you're not where you think you are yet in your commitment, relationship, in your clinging and cleaving. There's a weakness still there. Okay? So when we are in that kind of position, that's what's being exposed. Okay? You're welcome. All right, next. The side. Okay, up in the front here, Jonathan. Feeling pretty good about myself remembering names as best I can here.
This is open Midrash, right?
Yes, ask any question you want.
Well, I noticed you were talking about people who go around and we talk about gossip and Lashon Hara.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you about my own experience. I didn't understand that until I attended a Messianic congregation, and they talked about Lashon Hara. And there are 2 Bible verses that yellow page. Okay, here we go. There are 2 Bible verses that emphasize that Proverbs 11:13 and 16:28. And I didn't realize I was doing the wrong thing when I paid attention to people who were, who were gossiping and spreading Lashon Hara, because I grew up, as when I was a mainstream Christian, it wasn't considered such a sin to do that. And so until I got into the Messianic faith, I got a better picture of how I'm supposed to communicate with other people after I had learned about Lashon Hara.
Amen. Amen. Appreciate that comment. Look, and Lashon, okay, is the tongue. Hara is evil. Okay, so the evil tongue or evil speech. All right. And so my comment earlier this morning was that this didn't go out on the stream, I think it was before, but it might have gone out, is that, there are people out there talking about you, and if you're not as public as someone like me, maybe not as many people, but there are still people in your family, your friends who are talking about you, but I wanted people to know that whatever you're doing and saying, not only does he know it, But it will get back to the person you're talking about. It always does. And not always in the form that it may have gotten magnified by then. Okay? Oh, I heard you were talking. And then the next thing you know, big blow up because I heard you were talking about me. And what did you say? And you may have not been even saying anything that was that big a deal, but by the time it gets there, it gets blown up. But just realize that, we're to learn to deal with each other. If you have an issue, deal with the person you have the issue with. If you're not going to deal with them, then just deal with the issue privately. There's no reason to involve a whole lot of people. Now, that is different if you are counseling, right? If you're going to counsel and say, I'm in the middle of this thing and I don't know what to do. Or I have these feelings about this person because they did this or they did that or they didn't do or whatever. Instead of talking to your friend or some other person, talk to someone up the chain of command who can give you advice on how to handle it. Instead of generally what we do, and this is where it really becomes Lashon Hara. It's all about the intent behind the conversation. So if I'm having a problem with Jonathan, and I'm talking over here to, Ned, and I'm trying to talk about Jonathan, and I have a problem with Jonathan, I'm talking to Ned. Now, if when I talk about him, I'm not happy with him and I'm frustrated or I can't believe I'm offended by something he did, I may talk to Ned about it with the intention of hoping that Ned does one of two things or both, which is A, feel the way I feel about Jonathan. I'm trying to get him to see him a certain way. I'm trying to get more people to not like him or be upset with him or think he's, did something wrong or something, okay? That's Lashon Hara. Why would you speak to anybody about somebody else's behaviors in that form? Because you feel a certain way about somebody and you think everybody else should as well. And that's kind of your way of trying to get your pound of flesh or your whatever it is that you're trying to get. And so somebody in leadership, one of the shamishes or myself or somebody may have come up to you and treated you in a way that you did not like. And now, by the way, that doesn't mean that they did anything wrong or not. It may be your perception, or maybe they really did it. Whatever it is. And then you go to somebody and go, oh, well, let me tell you, can you believe the way, And it's not just sharing information like, hey, I just had this experience with one of the leadership and I don't really know how to interpret it and everything. That's different than, hey, can you believe that jerk, blah, 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 he talked to me and what about yelled at me, whatever it is, right? Now you want the other person to see that person that way. So you have to always ask yourself when you're speaking about people, especially, what is it that you're actually hoping to accomplish? And I've called people out on that. They'll come to me and I'll say, well, do you want me to feel angry with them or judge them or think they're what are you hoping I'm going to do by your sharing this with me? Do you want me to go talk to them? Well, then you may want to share it with me in a different way. So that's more where the Lashon Hara would be, okay? When we're talking in a way that's to embarrass, to shame, to get people to feel negatively about somebody else, all of these things fall into that category. All right, Rob, you got anything?
Okay, from Kathleen Phillips says, please give direction on how to wear the tzitzit.
I'm not real sure where that question is going from. Okay, so I'll cover just tzitzit questions in general and about that from there. First of all, it's a woman asking the question, so I can understand where that could be more of a challenge. So let's first start off with the whole who should be wearing tzitzit. All right? I've done this before. I've talked about this before. It never causes any controversy or problem. I've lost people from the congregation over this topic. Look, the scripture is Numbers 15. That's where we get the instruction. All right? And in Numbers 15, we can turn there, I suppose, 37. Now, bear in mind what's going on here. We got to get our context. Okay? Moses is teaching the children of Israel. At what point in this up to this point that Moses has been working with them since he pulled them out of Egypt, has Moses been talking to the women? None. Talking to the children? None. He's been talking to the men. With the expectation, because the women were thought of and looked at as being a part of a man. Not in lesser part, but just a part, including with the man. Whether it was included with the husband or a brother or a father. Same thing with the children. Okay? And so they're included in the thought. I mean, there's times when I've talked to a man who's married and thought about inviting. I said, of course your wife's invited. I think of her as part of you. You see what I'm saying? Now, a man had just gone out and was gathering sticks on the Sabbath, which was a no-no. All right, this is what happened previously, because that's our context, all right, is that this is going on right before we get the instruction of where the seats eat. And so this is important that we kind of understand where this is kind of coming from. There's a defiance, there's a thing going on in terms of the approach to Yahweh. There's a mindset that needs to be reminded. Well, we need to be reminded against that mindset. All right? Now, in a proper vertical structure, the men would be leading, setting the example, doing everything they need to do, and the ladies would see that all the time and have that example to follow, and then the same thing goes down then to the children. And so we get to this chapter, and it says, "Speak to the children of Israel," verse 38, "and you shall say to them to make tzitziot on the corners of their garments throughout the generations, and to put a blue cord in the tzitzit of the corners. And it shall be to you for a tzitzit, and you shall see it, and shall remember all the commands of Yahweh, and shall do them, and not search after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you went whoring. So that you remember and shall do all the commands, all my commands, and be set apart unto Elohim. I am Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim to be your Elohim. I am Yahweh your Elohim." Now, so here's your context. They were instructed. They were also still doing what they wanted. And we talked about that this morning. We talk about that almost every time I get on a microphone. The problem is the sovereign or the ruler in your own head, as we talked about it during the John readings. Okay, and this is the problem, is that the person who's self-sovereign is going to search out after their own hearts and their own eyes and their own understanding to make their decisions. They're not going to search out Scripture or get counsel from somebody higher up the structure. And so the tzitzit are to be a reminder to keep the commandments. Think of it like the original string around a finger. Some people would put a string around their finger to remember something. Then they couldn't remember why they put the string on their finger. All right? But the tzitzit only are for one thing. Commandment reminder. Okay, reminder, keep the commandments. And so the men in those days, actually almost everybody in those days, wore layers of garments, layers of cloth that would be tied maybe together. They didn't have the zippers we have today or the kind of sleeves and the things that we have in shirts and stuff. They had, basically these robes and garments that, take a long cloth, about rectangle shape, put a hole in the middle, put it over your head. That's one layer. You could tie it on the side, and it sits with four corners. So this is a common garment. And so he said, look, put tzitzit in the corners. Why in the corners? Because that way, everywhere that someone may look at you and anywhere you may look, you might see those tzitzit. So they're not just on one side or the other side or in the front or in the back. With a rectangular garment, though, they would be kind of just on the hips, a little to the front, a little to the back on your hips, because that's where they would sit. Now, bear in mind that I've got tzitzit on. If you're on the live stream, you can see them on the camera. You can see them here. It is harder for me to look down and see my tzitzit than for you to see them. So in a sense, while I am wearing them for me, I'm wearing them for you. My wife can see them. My children can see them. Everybody in the community can see them. All right? Which is why I am in complete disagreement with those who wear them tucked in. Because then they're only for you if you even remember that you have them on. Because they're out of sight, out of mind. Okay? I can reach down in a moment of, should I do this or should I do that? And go, okay, wait a minute. I've got my tzitzit. To remind me what's the right thing to do. And so that's where being in a community would really help, because then we can see everybody wear their tzitzit. Now in that verse 38, remember this is Yahweh, verse 37, speaking to Moshe, and then Moshe is telling the people. You see how that always works? Yahweh speaks to somebody who then speaks to the people. That's what we call a prophet, right? The one speaking the word of Yahweh with authority. And he said, speak to the children of Israel. Of course, you can interpret that as the children of Israel is the men, the women, the children, whoever. The Hebrew there is b'nai, and that could be the men. It could mean children in general. So we could interpret it different ways. But when we see the things that are going on, there's also a section in another part of the Torah that says, and men should not be putting on or seeking to wear that which pertains to a woman and vice versa. Okay? And so we have to wonder, are there things that are for men, for their leadership, for setting the example, and there are things for women? And I've had arguments with people over what that verse means and everything. Of course, everybody has their opinions, and that's fine. And so my interpretation, and this is a long-winded way of telling a person how they can wear them. Okay, my interpretation is that, first of all, men who are covenanted need to wear them. Okay? This is for the children of Israel. You really don't get to call yourself that if you're not covenanted. So, that would be like once you go in the water for sure and you've made your declarations to covenant, men should be coming out ready to put their tzitzit on and wear them all the time. It's the public declaration that you are a covenanted child of Israel. Child of the living Elohim, covenanted though. Because otherwise, why would anybody else need to be reminded to keep Torah except the covenanted person? Okay? So that's the first thing with it. Now, as far as how we wear them today, the point of wearing them had to do with them being on your clothes so that you always had them on, and having them be visible from all directions. The four corners idea. However, we don't wear four-cornered garments anymore. Now, you could wear a talit, which has four corners on it. And by the way, the talit's only purpose is to hold the tzitzit. Okay? And so there are those in the Jewish community that wear what's called a talit katan, which is actually a rectangle garment with a hole in the middle. They put over their head, put it underneath their shirt, and in the corners they put the tzitzit. And then they untuck the tzitzit. Well, some of them do, some of them don't, where you can see them. Okay? Depends on which particular Orthodox group you're talking about. Okay, modern Orthodox, they tuck them in mostly. Okay? The Chabad and the other ones like that, they leave them, they'll pull them out, which leaves their shirts and everything look a little unkempt because their undershirt is what's being pulled out of their overshirt, and then it's a whole different thing. And so I happen to just choose that I don't think he cares. He doesn't give the instruction on how to attach them to your clothes. Now, bear in mind, he said very specifically how to attach a lot of things when making the tabernacle. So if he wanted to, he certainly could have. Can we agree on that one? I mean, he gave very specific instructions for everything, for the hooks, for the attachments, for how to hang the different things and where to do it and whatever. So no confusion there. But he wants you to be wearing them, and they should be visible, and they should be from all directions. So I tend to wear mine. I put them through my belt. So I have a loop on the tzitzit. I slide my belt through so I can position them how I want. And I put them on the hip where a talit katan would fit. So where ancient Israel, the way they wore it, how they would sit. So a little bit to the front of my hip, a little bit to the back. I don't like to use belt loops because the belt loops kind of have them on your butt and on your crotch, and I'm not thinking that's where I want them. Okay? Because the belt loops are wherever they are. But if I slide my belt through it, I can slide it to wherever I want to position it. And because they tend to move, I have to have an awareness of them so I can move them where I want. And so it gives me that opportunity. Now, the ladies, Scripture has two kinds of commands. Positive commands, those are the you shall do, right? Negative commands that you shall don't. Don't do this. You shall not. You shall don't is not a proper word. Okay. But you shall not, all right? And so it's not like the command is negative. It's an instruction not to do. There are no instructions for the ladies not to wear the tzitzit. So I don't have a problem if you do it. Well, we're getting some wind behind us here. All right? So we have no instructions not to do it, ladies. So that's fine. You can wear them. Don't get upset, though, if I'm not mandating it from the microphone. My personal opinion is that, for the most part, what you need to do is find a man that you're covered by and make sure you're seeing his seat. So if your husband is in this, he needs to be wearing the seat to cover you. If I'm your leader and teacher, I wear seat to help remind you and cover you. Now, some of you are thinking, but I don't live near anybody. Okay, so wear the seat. Well, how do I put them on my garments? It's flexible, I suppose, to make sure to attach them in some way so that they can be in the right positions that they're supposed to be in. Okay, we're not taking them and making them into jewelry. Okay, we're not putting them around your wrist and making them into bracelets. And I mean, there was one lady that wanted to sell her stuff on my website a few years back, and her, I think her business was something called like Bling Your Fringe. Bling Your Fringe. Can you believe this? She was using like Swarovski crystals and all this other stuff, in her seat. And so I emailed her back and said, I'm sorry, but you and I are not wearing them and using them for the same purpose. Because see, me, I don't care if you said make them puke, orange, green, blue, whatever, and some horrible combination. I'm not doing this for fashion. I'm doing it for obedience. I don't mind if it doesn't match my outfit, ladies. All right, because a lot of ladies want to make all these colorful different ones so they can wear a different one with each outfit. It's not a fashion statement. Matter of fact, even better if it clashes. It draws people's attention. Okay? So it's not about, and it's not an accessory to your outfit. All right, so ladies, yes, you can wear them. Now, here's the important piece of this, though. All right? Let's make them the appropriate way. In other words, they should be white with a blue. Really, the word there is techelet. It's a special type of blue. But that dye, which they're not really sure where it comes from, they feel like they rediscovered it in Israel. You can buy the actual techelet string. I think it's techelet.com or something. I mean, if you want to know where to get it from, you can always contact me. You can get what they believe is the right stuff. But the blue that we use is a similar enough color. The point is that you have one blue, the rest is white. And people say to me, let me rephrase that. I see people wearing what I call rainbow seat. In other words, they'll use any colors they want and stick some blue in there. Or they'll wear different shades of blue within the context of it says one blue thread. Did it say anything about what to do with the others? No. The simple understanding is because you're not supposed to do anything else with the others. People say, oh, no, I could do whatever I want because he didn't say. Not necessarily, okay? In Genesis we're told that Judah would have from between Judah's feet would always be a lawgiver, a teacher of the law, okay? So when we have things that we're really not sure Scripture doesn't really explain in as much detail as we'd like, it's usually helpful to look to see what the Jews are doing in that area, at least to get some insight. I'm not saying all of a sudden we go bow down to them or something. I'm saying, but hey, by the way, my older brother Judah, how do you do this? And they do white, okay? And they stopped using the blue when they felt like they didn't know the exact blue to do. And when they did have the exact blue to do, it was too expensive for everybody to have it. It was a whole lot of poor reasoning, okay? But now they have it back, and they're wearing the blue. But it's still one blue and the rest white, all right? The funny part is all those people that like to argue with me about, well, I could do whatever color I want, they still tie them exactly like the Jews do. Is there a right way to tie them? I don't know. What is it supposed to look like? We don't know. We're not all the way back then. But we can tell you is how the Jewish community for a very long time has made their seat. And within different sects of Judaism, they tie them slightly differently. But generally, they look, when you see them, very much the same, okay, with some slight differences. So if you're going to wear them, you can always pick them up from us. We sell them as a convenience for you. But you could always make them yourself. We have a video on our website on how to make them. So you can always go ahead and get the string and make them yourself. Let's stick with white with one blue. Okay? Now, I've told the story because people say, well, what's the difference? Well, it teaches us a lot of lessons. Think about it this way. What does the blue thread represent? Mashiach. Even the Jews understand this. Royal blue, even though it's not exactly the royal blue, it's a different color, the techelet, but it's not that purple, but it's that in-between kind of bluish, purplish thing, techelet. That techelet, they know represents Mashiach. And the white, if we were getting wool from an animal, all the bleaching or whatever they might have been able to do, the wool would be a little bit imperfect in some areas, little spots, a little bit of blemishes of off color, as much as of a white, pure white that they could get. Isn't that you? Kind of stained a little bit, a little blemished a little bit. But to get you to where you need to be wrapped around by Mashiach. You can't get that image with red and green and yellow and orange and everything else in your seat. Okay? All right? By the way, in Ephesians chapter 6, anybody know where I'm going? What's in Ephesians chapter 6? The armor of Elohim. All right? Do you know what it says to do with the armor? It says to gird your waist with what? Truth. Okay, so you're girding your waist with truth. Who's the truth? Yeshua. What also is the truth? The Torah. So when you look at your seat, is that not around your waist and the truth? Could the seat have actually been in mind as part of that? Girding your waist with truth? I thought that was pretty cool. You know, it's funny. I was at a Sukkot, standing and teach. Actually, I was sitting, I think, even in teaching, which is very rare for me to be doing that. I usually stand. And I was reading the armor of Elohim as part of a teaching. And when I got to that verse, I jumped out of my chair and I said, hold on. Grabbed the seat. I said, wait a minute. You think he's talking about this? That was one of my aha moments at that time. So anyway, hopefully that's a long-winded way of giving you all your CT questions answered in one shot. All right? Ladies, you can wear them. Men, if you're baptized, if you're immersed, if you made your declaration, if you're covenanted, you need to wear them. All right? It's important. It's one of the things that he instructs us to do. Okay? And ladies, please don't get offended if you feel like some things are sort of sounds chauvinistic or this or that. It's the society where they were at the time and understanding the roles at the time and instructing people where they were. Okay? You didn't have women's lib and women voting and women working in that same way as today. But they also had a much more of a synergy and a partnership in getting things done than we have today in some ways. All right? And there certainly was a much more clarity as to the roles. Okay? In terms of the man knowing how to be a man and the woman knowing how to be a woman. All right. That question came from, where was that one from? Live stream? Okay, so now we're on this side.
I have a few questions. I did want to kind of piggyback off of Mr. Jonathan's question about Lashon Hara. What if there's a situation that you just want to have information about, not necessarily gossiping about it, but what if you just want to know the information? What does that look like for the structure? Would you rather us go to like shamishes, go directly to you, or like how does that look like? I know you might say it's not our business, but just if there was another answer, what would that be? Okay, so I'm going to try to guess what you're talking about here. So in other words, you heard about something, and you want more information about it. I mean, I'm trying to understand what you mean. You want more information about, like, what? Like, what kind of thing you're talking about? Well, yeah, so you're talking about Lashon Hara as something evil, and you're trying to distort the character of someone else. But what if it's not that? What if it's just information you're wanting to know? And so, typically it's common to just talk to, someone, but because it may not be our business, it feels like it's wrong.
Okay, but you're still ducking the question, which is...
Well, I don't want to just ask in front of everybody, but
but you're ducking the question. The question is, what is the nature of what you're trying to ask? In other words, you heard or you think you know that somebody did something that they shouldn't have done or whatever it is, and that's what you're trying to get the information about. Is that correct?
No, I have absolutely no idea what's going on, but I just would like to...
Then what would even spur you to ask a question then?
Curiosity.
Curiosity about what? I'm not just going to walk up to Becky and start asking her questions about what? Anything? By the way, do you have anything to share with me? No, you had a reason to be curious. So what are you curious about? What sparked your curiosity?
I don't know how to answer that without saying the same thing, so I guess never mind.
But do everybody understand what I'm getting at here? You don't just seek information. There's a reason you're looking for information. Now, maybe you heard because other people were speaking, or maybe you saw something that you didn't understand what was going on, and you want to understand it. So you go and you ask questions. Okay, and that's not Lashon Hara, being curious, but you should go up to people and say, look, this may not be any of my business, but I was just curious, and you can tell me or not, and you can ask a question. But you got to start off by understanding why you're asking the question. What sparked the asking of the question? You're not just curious in general. I mean, I don't just go over to people and say, I don't even know what to ask if I don't know. I have to have a reason to ask a question, okay? Like if I heard from somebody that somebody may not have been having a great time at their job and they may be at risk of losing it, I may walk up to that person, hey, look, I heard something. It's not my business, but is everything okay with you at work? Or maybe I heard something else about, you know what I'm saying, about a health thing or about a relationship thing. But there's a reason I'm asking the question because I have to be aware of some level of it. So that's really what you got to sort out first. Why do you want to know? Is it your business? You should already know if it's your business. And if it's not your business, keep your curiosity to yourself. Okay? I mean, seriously. I mean, think about it. There's a lot of stuff in life that you could be curious about. It really isn't any of your business. And by the way, if you know about it after you did find out and you shouldn't have, you're likely to share it with some other person anyway. Because you know what we all do? We all have that one person or two people that we have that we go, oh, if I tell them, they'll never tell anybody else. But they have two other people other than you like that. And they'll go share it with them, thinking, oh, they'll never share it with anybody else. Which is why I know what you guys say about me. Amen. And all of you should own that because I'm telling you, I know. And you're all like, but you never said anything to me? Because I'm not going to say anything. That's your problem. You got a problem with me, you should come to me. If you don't come to me, the people around you, it's going to be a filter to see how much they listen to you and buy into Lashon Hara, which, by the way, is worse almost than doing the Lashon Hara, is listening to it, okay, and buying into it. But no, I'm not necessarily going to go up to people because I know people are shy to come and tell me, oh, you know, these people are talking about, well, who? Oh, I don't want to say anything. I'm not going to go up to them. Very rarely, unless I think they're really causing a divisional problem, and then I'll have somebody say, listen, we need to stop this from really splitting up the group. Because this is not, not good. But I'm going to be talked about all the time. But when I'm giving you a hard time because I know you don't want to mention the exact situation, but you still got to be able to answer my question without even going to the exact situation. Okay? And my question is, why are you curious? Why are you seeking information? And that's the question that's key. Because you know what? Some of you, actually, I'm sure it's none of the ones in the room. Nobody in this room can fall into the category of being a nosy busybody. That never happens in this room. Okay? But that's what makes you a nosy busybody. When you feel like you need to know everything that comes into your experience that you don't know, and you want the details because they're juicy and they're fun and you like to hear it. Or you just don't want to feel like you're the one left out and everybody else knows. I mean, there may be a serious thing that happens and you weren't around for it and you want to know what the details are if you're allowed to know. I mean, look, let's say we take somebody and we throw them out. You're now outside the camp. Well, maybe you don't know about that. Maybe we don't want to share those details with you. You may just need to know, hey, listen, that was what it was. But those kind of things can happen. Okay? Or maybe you just notice somebody's not around and you don't know why. And maybe we tell you, well, look, they're home, they've been really sick, or they're traveling. So there may be a curiosity, and that's okay. But allow for the person to not necessarily answer your question. Be able to say, hey, listen, this may not be my business, but I noticed something. Or I became aware of something, and I don't understand. I'm just curious. Okay, so you can ask if you package it appropriately. But you should be asking yourself first, why do I even need to know? Because I'm curious. Because I don't know and I want to know. That's not good enough. Okay? We got to find our own boundaries of staying in those boundaries instead of being a nosy busybody, which is what you could easily become, even though you don't want to think of yourself as a nosy busybody. And maybe you're just nosy and you don't actually step to the next level and become a busybody by sharing it with everybody and everything else. But there are people that I run into, and it's like, it's amazing to me how they seem to know everything about everything because everybody's talking to them. You guys aren't all Catholic, are you? You don't have to confess to each other. Okay? Oh, but Rabbi, it says that verse about confessing your... Okay, look. The right people, you have to go to the right person. If it's somebody that you have an issue with, you go to them. If you need counsel, you come to the counsel people, the people that you counsel with. It's not just going out there and just, confessing to people. All right? Keep your dirty laundry to yourself. Work on it yourself. Get counsel if you need help. Work on, if it's with somebody else, fixing it with them. You don't need to involve everybody. Your business doesn't have to be everybody's. We live in a world with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and everything else. Everything is like public. Your life doesn't have to be all out there in public. All right? Anybody remember the last time I posted anything personal on Facebook? There's no way you could. It's been years and years and years. I can't even remember. And even the things I did last post, they weren't personal. They were ministry. I don't post personal things on Facebook. My business is my business. I don't need to put it out there for everybody. And I don't need to pump up my ego with all the people's thumbs up and likes, or I don't have to get all depressed because nobody did. How come nobody liked my post? And then worse, you notice your friends post, whenever they post, they like that post. How come they always like her post? They don't like my post. Who cares? Anything else?
You still haven't accepted my friend request, but I deactivated my Facebook, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, you are one of 3,000 plus waiting.
I know.
I haven't accepted a friend request since 2017, okay?
Okay, so I have two
I don't
more.
even go on Facebook to see the friend requests. So I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Actually, some of you might be thinking, but you accepted mine. One rare moment, I may be on there, see a name I recognize, not that I'm looking for it, but it just popped up. I may go ahead and accept that one. But I've accepted 2 or 3 friend requests in the last 5 years, okay? So please don't take that personally then.
No, I'm only kidding. I deactivated my Facebook.
I don't know why you want to friend request me either, because I'm never on and I never post anything.
At the time, it was just like, oh, this is my rabbi. And, apparently being Facebook friends with someone is officiating of some sort. I don't know, but...
It's like an official relationship, but not really sort of thing?
Exactly.
Kind of, maybe? Okay.
Exactly.
I'm just thinking about it. All these people want to friend request me. It's like, I don't post anything. I don't read your posts. Okay, some of you, I love when people say to me, well, did you see so-and-so's post because it popped up on your feed? I was like, I have 5,000 friends that I've already accepted. Do you know how many fast my feed moves? I'm not going to see your post. If I see it, that's just random luck, Because it may sit on with how many friends you've got, it may sit longer. My feed moves very quickly. For the people, because I did accept friend requests, back in the beginning of all this. I just am never on there, so I don't see any point. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
You're fine. I asked this question back at Sukkot last year, but I don't think it was the time to answer, so I'm just going to ask again, and it's fine if you don't want to answer. But in Genesis 2:7, I asked if the word lives was plural because of just translation, but you said it wasn't. But I would really love to know what your thoughts are about that whole verse. Because I've kind of looked outside of sources, but I don't really want to, because you're my anointed appointed, and I don't really want to go with what other people are saying, so I'm just curious as to what you have to say about it.
Okay. I do remember being asked this question, so if it was you, that's fine. Okay, Yahweh Elohim formed the man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of lives. Because the word there is a plural word in the Hebrew, okay? All right, so, and the man became a living being. When we deal with the creatures being created here, Genesis 1, and we're leading into this, they all became living creatures, or nephesh, that's the Hebrew, okay? But here we have the breath of lives being breathed into human beings versus what happens with the animals. Make sense so far? Right? So we have a difference. So what is that difference is what you're asking. So the animals, do they get resurrected? Or do they get one life and that's it? So you got breathed into you the earnest or the beginnings, the little piece of the ruach that allows for you to live more than once.
That's
Amen?
beautiful. Amen.
All right. Question
Okay,
answered.
and then my last question has to do with, so I work on a lot of personal development like of recently, but a lot of who I listen to, just YouTube videos, they're very new agey, and I know you always talk about kind of just navigating through that, but I don't really know how that looks like because it's hard to receive what they're saying and then try to like subtract the new ageness and try to apply it with like this walk. So if you could just kind of give some pointers on that, and then I'm done. Thank you very much.
That would be one that would probably be a lot easier if you gave me like an example and a person you were listening to. You don't do it now, but I mean, where we can kind of go through that. Because I know how much you like to mention exactly what you're talking about, so we'll skip that. But no, but seriously, there are a lot of teachers out there. There have been a lot of teachers, throughout the centuries. I mean, there's always teachers out there. I mean, you can go back and even to the ancients of all the cultures, and they have the philosophers or the sages or the teachers of their generations. And of course, they are always going to be coming from their personal perspective, which will be biased to the culture, to the religious beliefs, and to all these other things that are going on. And you, if you're going to utilize any of those teachers, you have to be making sure you know what it is you're looking for. Looking for example, understanding how the mind and not saying, well, this comes from the universal mind and a higher power. Well, that's their way of understanding Yahweh to whatever degree they understand. And so you can just quickly understand, okay, that's their way of explaining something they don't understand the way I do. But I'm looking for is, what are they going to teach me about why I'm all screwed up and how to fix it? But from a more, I guess, secular or worldly point of view. In other words, things that you don't require you to be Torah observant, covenanted people to do. Anybody can do these things. All right? Like if you learn to set goals, you'll accomplish a lot more things. And that is not a religious thing. It's not but the person doing it can kind of flavor it with anything. Okay? I didn't understand just how true that was until I started homeschooling my children and put them through one of the better name, bigger name, Christian homeschool programs, and I realized every subject apparently is about Jesus. And my kids were like, how did they squeeze that into this subject? But they just, their bias is going to be in that. And they got tired of hearing the J name and said, we don't want to do this anymore. Okay, so we found another program. But the thing is, everybody you listen to, they're going to be teaching you what they understand, but from where they are and with what they believe you need. And so that could be secular humanism and new aginess. It could be anything, all right? There are some people out there from every religion that, boy, you can get some good stuff from them, but you got to be careful. There's still some of the Christian teachers you used to like that teach some things about just sort of life, lessons in general. That's probably pretty good, all packaged in a challengingly, sort of landmine-filled package, okay? So you have to be careful and understand that. So the discernment and the challenge of finding those pieces out is that I think you really have to be more clear when you start what it is you're hoping to accomplish when you go through the program in the first place. When you're reading the book, what are you looking for? And keeping yourself more targeted that way. So that when you find it, you know what you're looking for. And also being aware that there is other agendas playing out here, and I want to be aware of that. Look, I'd like it to be as simple as walking down the aisle of the supermarket. I always use the cereal aisle as a joke, but, most of us have eaten cereals in our day, and we've gone down the aisle, and there's 60 different choices there, or 100 different choices there. And probably you like 4 or 5 of them, or whatever you like, but you don't like all 100 of them. And so what do? You walk right by almost all of them just to the one you like or the 2 you like, and you pull it off the shelf and you ignore everything else. You don't sit there worried about the ones you don't like. You don't feel affected by the ones you don't like. You're not influenced by the ones you don't like. You just ignore them. So you should be able to read a book, listen to a program, watch a YouTube, and filter those things through. Problem is, if you start listening to one teacher over and over again, you start to believe and start to be affected by it. Because remember, whatever you input will eventually affect you. So I would be very careful of listening to any one just by straight through and only that one without mixing it up a little bit, because that's when it starts to take root a little stronger. Okay, when you're looking for personal development things. And because of my level of expertise in that area and all of the stuff that I know and the people I've listened to and everything else, please contact me, tell me who you're listening to, get my opinions, and I can help you. All right? And if it's not good, you'll hear that sound. The fire trucks were just going by. The volunteer fire department is literally right behind this tent across the street. All right? Which always gives us comfort over here in this building to know that, hey, fire department's right across the street. Anyway, did that help? All right. Next on the side. All right, Grayson, you have one? Oh, sure. You think if you're taking around the mic, you can get a question in too. I see.
Yeah, I have a few. From today's verses, John chapter 15, verse 24, it says, "If I did not do among them the works which no one else did, they would have no sin. But now they both seen and have hated both me and my Father." So what does that mean in regards to people who haven't had their eyes and ears opened today and sin?
Okay, give me the verse again.
John chapter 15, verse 24.
That was one of the ones I was going to try to get to that we never got to today. All right, because that's one of those verses that people get all caught up in. The answer, first of all, has nothing to do with them. All right? This is all about the full disclosure to those people that have covenanted. The full disclosure once your eyes have been opened, your ears have been opened. He's giving that full disclosure. He says, look, he says, if I did not do among them the works which no one else did, they would have no sin. He also said, if I had not come and spoken to them, back in verse 22. Okay, he's talking about, first, he didn't just say, if I, everybody that ever saw what I did, if they don't just buy into me, then they're in sin or something. No, he said, look, these people, I've come to them, I spoke to them. I spoke to them like they should know better, and they chose, and now they have sin. They rejected. The sin is always going to be, in this kind of situation, those who reject the eye-opening, ear-opening experience. All right? So everybody else out there, they're still waiting for that moment. All right? Does that answer the question?
Yeah. And then another question I have is in Genesis 1, in verse 27, it says that Elohim created man in his image, but then Adam isn't created until Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. So is that still talking about the same thing, or are those two different things happening at different times? And how does that all work?
Yeah, no, look, the creation is explained in chapter 1. Then we go back. A lot of times Scripture will go from a point and go forward to a next point, and then it'll jump back, give you more details, explain a few things, and go forward from that point. And so all the things play out, and then you get to the Sabbath. It's all done. Now we want to explain to you how things worked out with man and how that was about, because there's more special details needed than just saying, okay, I made bugs, and I made birds, and I made fish, and I made man, and I made... No. The man thing was a big deal. So now we got to give it more details. Okay?
Okay. And then my last one is, I forget what chapter in John talks about it, but it says that Yeshua is the only one who has risen up to heaven. And I was wondering, so in Genesis chapter 5, verse 24, it says that Enoch walked with Elohim, and then he was no more, for Elohim took him. I'd always had the assumption that he was taken up to heaven, but if what's said in John is true, that Yeshua is the only one who was taken up to heaven, where did Enoch go?
The Bahamas. Elijah's there too. They're having a great time. Okay. The parameters I gave you at the beginning. Let's agree to what something says or doesn't say. So what's it say? It says Elohim took him. Took him where? It doesn't tell us. Yeshua says no one has been to except me, who's come from. But now he may be talking about two different things to this one slight way, is that when you die, or when your journey's done, there's the element of you that gets stored for the resurrection. Go to the Millennium and Kingdom teaching for that. But because after all, when you get resurrected, you're going to still be you. People keep thinking, oh man, I was hoping not to still be me. Okay, so, all right. Well, hopefully you'll be a much more Yeshua-like version of you, okay? Yeah, clap for that, all right? So, but he's talking about the ones who would actually go to heaven, experience it, see it, live there, see the Father and all. That experience no one else has had, okay? But as far as where he went, it doesn't say, all right? He took him. He took him out of that place, all right? Because remember, Enoch was, it tells us very little in Genesis, but Enoch was likely the Melchizedekian priest at the time, the righteous one at the time in that generation. And that generation was heading in a wrong direction. And he said, your time's done, that's fine. I'll take you out of there. Where he went, what happened with that, that's all we know. And we have to learn to be okay with all we know, all right? But we do have other things, which is great, like Grayson's putting together, saying, but there are verses that could be connected to this, because after all, Yeshua said, no one has gone except he who's come. Okay, How does that fit in then with Enoch? These are the kind of great questions you should be asking. And that's why all pieces of the puzzle need to be taken out of the box and used when we put these puzzles together to try to get an understanding. But also, the answer may be, he didn't tell us. All we know is that he was taken. But the Christian mindset and even the Jewish mindset, has often been, well, he went to heaven. Okay, it's not what it says. It doesn't say where he went. He just said he took him. He wasn't anymore where he was doing whatever he was doing with all those people. He took him out of that. Okay. Elijah was doing his thing. He took him out, and then Elisha got to take it over. So there are people that think these guys never died. But Scripture says it's given once for all to die. Okay, so how do we balance all those things out? All right, next question on this side, Janet. We'll let somebody else on this side go, considering Grayson hog the mic.
Rabbi, I'm sorry for this question. I really would like your...
I like questions that start out with apologies.
Because it's a little bit rocky, and I don't know if I should even... But I think a lot of people may benefit from it. Okay, so we've been talking about Lashon Hara, right? So I was thinking about that when
don't say bad things about it.
So I was thinking about it when we read John this morning, when Yeshua, Yehuda and Kepha, they both, kind of betrayed him, maybe different levels, right? But it said in the scripture, he loved them until the end, right? So it has happened, right? You were talking about this. If somebody is saying something that is negative about you, I have this internal kind of struggle to kind of separate myself a bit from the people that have come to me. But I'm thinking about your words, judging. I don't want to judge anybody, but using judgment to not be involved with those situations. So can you help me understand what does love in this situation will mean practically?
All right, you were right. That's totally wonky, and we'll move on. No. That's actually a really good question. Okay, so your main role, all of you out there, I'll talk to Janet too, but the main role is to understand that when somebody comes to you, if you're going to have a proper relationship with that person, they need to understand that you are not comfortable if you're not comfortable with that. And say, look, I don't know what's going on between you and the person you want to talk to me about. I wasn't there. I'm either friends or not friends with them on my own independently from you. If you're trying to get me to feel a certain way about them, I'm not interested. Okay? If you have a problem with them, you need to go talk to them. If you're not comfortable doing that, then you need to talk to the leadership. But you don't need to come to me to get me to feel a certain way about them. Now, if you're friends with somebody, close friends, they may come to you saying, I'm really struggling with Janet. I don't know what to do. And then you're looking for help. Okay? Well, what did she do? Well, she was doing this thing, and I didn't know what to do about it. As opposed to, can you believe? Wait till I tell you what so-and-so was doing. That's a whole different approach. And if someone comes to you like that, you can say, hold on, stop. No, I don't want to do that. We can still be friends and we can hang out, but not with doing that. All right?
Can I have one more question? I have experienced this mainly in sessions with clients. This is so weird, but when they were describing situations that they were really, really against Torah, like some of the abominations, and they kind of they were talking about their experience. I was looking at their faces, and this happened to me 2 times, and their faces looked like they were changing a little bit, like a little bit devilish. And I don't want to scare anybody, but this was real. But I guess my question is, I was reading again John in the morning, and there was a passage that said something like, has Satan entered into him before Yehuda was going to betray Yeshua? So what should I do with any of this? I don't know if that's ever going to happen again, but should we get any understanding about that?
All right, so this is good stuff. Okay, so when we're dealing with the idea of seeing somebody's face change or Hasatan entered them and this stuff, look, Hasatan means the adversary. So, if you and I are talking and you trip over my tripwire or I trip over one of yours, and then my face will change, your face will change, whatever. And that's not a demon or some other thing. So when someone's talking about stuff and all of a sudden something that is like a trigger, like maybe they're struggling with their Torah walk or they're blaming Yahweh or the Torah walk for something or they're mad at the leadership, then they can go from this to all of a sudden their face will change and their whole disposition will change. And so realize that's a tripwire that then has them change their internal nature, right? We talk about their intrinsic nature. Like you could be annoying or you can be an annoying person. Like at that moment, I could do something that's irritating to somebody, or my whole nature is just going around being irritating all the time. We know people like that, right? Okay? And we also know people that are irritating for 5 minutes, and then that's not really who they are, but they, And so that moment, that person was a shift in their intrinsic focus and disposition. Okay? Totally fine, everything's pleasant. You hit the tripwire, and all of a sudden, they're a whole different person. That's not demonic per se. That's not the devil. So when it says that, and the devil having entered Judah, in other words, Judas was, his disposition was, I'm here, I'm doing these things and everything, but you know what? I finally had enough. He's not doing what I want him to do as Messiah. This isn't the way it's supposed to be. And he became an adversary to what's going on. It's not that he was possessed. All right? Okay. It's when we change our nature to children of disobedience as a nature, not a demon possession. We see that in Ephesians, okay? You walk after a certain method and belief system, you can be the children of righteousness. You walk over a different one and you're disobedient. And something sometimes just snaps, especially with people that tend to be very steady, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, who are you? Well, it's not necessarily a demon. It's just that somebody tripped over one of their landmine tripwires or whatever and triggered something. And so when you're counseling people, you're going to draw some things out, and when you draw it out, all of a sudden you hit a tripwire, and their whole thing can shift. And if you have any skill at counseling and you have good understanding of people, you can shift them back into reality and calm them down and get them out of that place where they become that person. Okay? And that takes some skill, because probably more often than not, once they trip, they're stuck for a little while. Bringing them back quickly is hard, okay? Shutting that mode once it gets triggered down is very difficult at times. All right, over here. Oh, it's live. Okay, over here.
Yeah.
Randall, we'll get to you in a minute. But we have Shira, okay? And then we'll get to...
Thank you, Rabbi Steve. I have a question about Bible translations, and I'm going to say something not very nice about the ISR, but it's something that I've heard you say from the Bema more than once, and that is when they come to translate the letters of Shaul, especially you get into Romans, Corinthians, Galatians, they use the word Torah for anything, dogma, oral traditions. It's very confusing.
Yes.
But I am very thankful for your wonderful teachings throughout the years. I've just been working through the series on What Are You Thinking? And I specially earmarked section 11 where you go into helping us understand Romans 8. I really, really appreciate that. However, this is a request for either one of two things. The best thing would be if you ever found time to finish your own translation, especially of these books of Shaul. Would you care to comment on that?
No, listen, I've wanted to do that forever. I got started, many years ago, a little bit on it. I really would need transcriptions to make it easier for me of the teachings for when there was a couple of teachings where I went through 3 or 4, 5, 6 chapters of like Romans or Hebrews and really covered some things that deal with the translation problems, and I can put those in. I remember most of them so that when I'm doing reading in those sections, I go ahead and give you the insight. You know, I've had people in the past who didn't, they're just listening and they're wondering what translation I'm reading from, and they're like, well, first I thought you were reading from the ISR, but then some of the things you said weren't actually in there. That's because I've already made those edits in my head, so when I get to those verses, I just read them with my own edits, and I tell you that I'm doing that this is my way of understanding better the translation. So, we're getting closer to the point where I may have time because the team is coming together, the work is being spread out a little more effectively and efficiently, even though we're growing at the rate we are, and so that I may actually get time to do those kind of things. So it's on my list. It's every time we go through these things and I look at them and I'm like, I need to, especially when you guys read out of the new one and I'm reading out of the older version, and some things in the new one actually I like better, some things I don't. And some things are the problem in both. I still think it's one of the better translations, and people ask me, well, what one do you use? Well, this isn't the one I use because it's the best one. I haven't done any research to find the best one. It's just the one I've been using, so I know where everything is. And the rest of it is my own Hebrew and Greek studies to know what translation issues were there and that kind of thing. We also have problems with the Septuagint versus the Masoretic and some of the translations in the Tanakh. Some of the things are just not right because the Masoretes messed it up, and the Septuagint was actually more accurate. So it's very challenging to have the time to do all of that, but yes, I would like to very much.
Well, I'm particularly fascinated with the ISR 2009, the slaughter place of incense.
Yes, what they did, and this is the problem why you have the Torah problem too in Paul's writings, is all they did was take certain words, do a word search and replace in their manuscripts, and they changed every place that said dogma or law and made it Torah. Every place that said altar, they turned it into a slaughter place, even though the altar of incense is not a slaughter place. And, they took the easy way out and just made these mass replaces, and it didn't help in as much as they may have thought it did.
Would you be interested? I'm passionate about this. Would you be interested in helping me to locate sections of your teaching that would help you if they were transcribed? Because I can do this, and there might be others who might be willing to do that if we could pinpoint or search through and provide you with transcriptions.
Okay, so you can clap for that. Okay, here's the problem. And you're aware of it because we've done this before. I need anybody that's willing to do this to do only a word-by-word, unedited transcription. Even though the written word is not, the spoken word doesn't read very well. It's irrelevant. That's not why we need it for. This is not going to be for publication. The first thing we're going to do with it is be able to then do a search for a word through the transcripts and find out what teachings have that topic by that word search. It's almost like a concordance. for the teachings. So if anybody does transcribing and is good at transcribing, is willing to do it and help us out, it just needs to be you take a teaching, we make sure to sign you up for it so we don't have 5 people doing the same teaching, which is what we had last time. Everybody was doing the same one, and then we had 5 different versions of it. But also, because we were thinking of publishing them, everybody was trying to help with their edits, and they don't know how to edit my stuff because it has to be the way I understand it to make sure it comes through. So it gets challenging there. So these things won't be for publication, but if I had one giant file of all the transcriptions and we wanted to look up something like, what he was just talking about, or the person who was asking about lives or life, or maybe looking at light or darkness, just type it in. Where's that? Or when you're talking about some things that are in Paul's writings, okay, where are we dealing with the book of Romans? Boom, it's going to be in the transcription because I quote, Romans this, Romans that. Fine, let's see where every time I went to Romans, and then we'll find what teachings cover that. And so, yes, if anybody would like to do that, you can contact us. Maybe I'll have Shira head that up so she can coordinate it. But it has to be just a literal word-for-word, unedited, period. Okay? And so that's the only way this will work. All right. Because I've tried software, by the way, and it did not work well because my accent and the way I say things, Dragon Speak thought the dragon was speaking. Okay, so...
I just have one more question.
Yep.
About the apocryphal books. I've been considering getting a Sefer Bible, something to become familiar with these because I know they are quoted. Do you have any comment on what benefit it might be to study these, the apocryphal?
Okay, so I have a Sefer Bible. Somebody gave it to me or whatever. I don't use it. It's too big. I think it's gigantic. I mean, work out carrying this thing, lifting it up, putting it down. I don't do anything with those things. So, I mean, if you want to follow your teacher, I never refer and go back and look at Jasher or Enoch or Jubilees or any of those things. So I don't find that they're necessary. I find that everything you need is in your scripture. I find that most of the people that I talk to that do use them extensively are in confusion about what this says. And they almost start quoting, Enoch and Jubilees more than they quote the scripture. I know lots of people like that, okay? And they're always trying to sell me on going in that direction. This is the word that he has me teaching you. If I decide to do anything different, I'll let you know at that point. But at this point, you need to know I'm not keeping anything from you. I don't look at them. I own them. I own them in many different forms because people either give them to me or they're part of other books that I have. I do not look at them. The only time I looked at any of those books is I was trying to do a quick study many, many years ago on who they were promising to give the tithe to. When Jacob says, I'll give my tithe to you. Well, who's he talking to? Yeah, who's physically was alive to give his tithe to? Who was this Melchizedek? Of course, in the Jewish writings, in the Torah portion writings, it says Shem. But in the book of Jasher, it says it was Shem. So that was my one thing I've ever taken out of an external book, okay? And so that doesn't mean you shouldn't look at them, but it's landmines and traps and issues because it doesn't say everything exactly the same as what this does, okay? And so what do you do with that? Well, right now I think you need to become an expert at this book. I think every time I talk, you should realize that you're not there yet, all right? Because I know I'm saying stuff you don't know. Because I know I'm saying stuff I didn't know till I said it. So this book is going to keep you busy enough. So hopefully that helped a little bit. I'm not against you doing it. You're welcome to do it. I don't use them, okay, at all. Just so you know. Okay. Oh, Rob, I was on this side. Or Randall, was that for Randall next? All right, we'll get Randall, then Rob.
Okay. This is something I've been thinking about for quite some time, especially when dealing with whether or not the thief on the cross conversation happened or not. But in Matthew 52 and 53, when it talks about the graves were opened.
Matthew, what chapter?
Matthew 27, 52 and 53.
All right, because there was no Matthew 52, so I was a little bit nervous there. Okay.
The Apocrypha book.
Oh, okay. That's why I don't use them. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, it was said the graves were open and many bodies of the Kodashim who had slept arose and came out of the graves after his resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared unto many. Is there any place else that has a second witness, any other writing or any in your teachings or anything, or does that mean something else and it's not literal?
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because of the point it makes, not because of what's happening in this verse. Look, your book that we have to use, we call it the Scriptures or the Bible or whatever, it has lots of stuff in it written by different authors at different times. Some of them are describing the same event, some of them are describing all different events. We're reading in John today about the Last Supper. Very different kind of conversation in a lot of ways than was happening in Matthew, Mark, or Luke. These things are from different perspectives. But now, as far as understanding things, you also need to understand that some places you find the one-time mention of something. So one-time mentions don't mean because there's only one time it has no value at all. But I think we can agree that all things that were vital were mentioned lots of times. I mean, lots and lots of times. Okay? And so this is a one-time mention. We don't really know what to do with it. It's sort of challenging because you would think that people coming out of the grave would be very newsworthy, and none of the historians mention it. Okay? Josephus doesn't, Philo doesn't. I mean, they don't mention this event, although they do mention other events that were pretty big that are more commonly understood. So this is one of those ones that's in there, and I go, I don't know what to do with it, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to just put it over here.
All right. Yeah, I just figured if something this grand would be in somebody else's writing, Josephus or any one of those.
And it's not, and it's also confusing to the whole idea of waiting for the resurrection and all those other kind of things. Yeah. So it would turn this into the first resurrection in a sense, and it just doesn't fit. Okay?
Yeah, and I've heard it said by others that these were Yeshua's first fruits offering to the Father, and that they're the 24 elders.
None of that is said anywhere. So
right.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Rob.
Okay, from Tamar says, "What are your thoughts regarding taking an oath in court of law and like placing your hand on the Bible?"
All right, so look, they just want assurances that you're doing something that should put you in a place of fear of lying. And so, if you don't want to swear, you can affirm. They'll let you do that. They don't really care at this point. They give you choices. They just want you to affirm that you're going to tell the truth. And since we are basically a Judeo-Christian country, at least we started out that way, the tradition had been to have someone put their hand on a Bible to do that. And I've been in court, and they've never made me put my hand on a Bible. They just asked me to affirm that I would tell the truth. Okay? So, because I've been a witness for things, and I've had to testify to, for people's situations and things. So I've been able to do that, but nobody's ever asked me to put my hand on a Bible to do that. So if they did, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I respect the Bible, and if that's going to be a sign that you're going to feel more assured that I'm going to tell the truth, that's fine as well. Now, if they wanted me to put my hand on a Quran or some other thing, I may have a problem. All right? But if they're going to choose to use the book I use, I'm okay with that. All right? And by the way, back to Randall's point, I just thought of an additional thing to say. He's like, look, let's be very careful that we're not building any critical decision-making or doctrinal positions based on a one-time appearance of something. All right? Look, you find that with the thief on the cross, so to speak. The thief that's up there next to Yeshua, and he's talking all, blah, blah, blah. And the other thief goes, hey, wait a minute, be nice. We deserve to be up here. That guy doesn't. And then Yeshua talks to him. That only appears in one gospel. Worked out real nicely for the Catholic Church to sell, deathbed confessions and things. But it doesn't match up with what we understand everything else in Scripture says. Okay? As a matter of fact, the only other gospel that mentions it has the thieves mocking him, and that's it. Okay? So just be careful that we're not taking doctrinal positions, because the Catholic Church and all the rest of the churches have all bought into the idea that you die, you go to heaven or hell from that verse almost alone. Now, of course, Yeshua says, today I tell you, I will, you'll be with me in paradise. Well, he wasn't going there for 3 days. Wasn't going anywhere for 3 days. Of course, I say, well, if you put a comma here, he's saying, today I'm telling you that someday you'll be. Look, whatever that is, it doesn't match up with anything else. Oh, so you're saying it doesn't belong in your Bible? I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying I'm not going to build a doctrinal position on a one-time, doesn't match up with anything else verse. I'm going to be very cautious with that. Man has had his hands on this book. If you can't buy into that, you're having a problem. The truth is here. It was unadulterated and perfect when it was given, but you have no copies of that. They don't exist. All right? But I know that the Father maintained all that you need, and it is in here, and that's why you need teachers to help you sift through all of the manhandling that the book has been through. Okay? And that's part of it, is understanding. Don't build a big deal out of a one appearance in one place, no other witness thing. To me, that's dangerous. Okay, that can get you in trouble. Okay, this side.
Thank you, Rabbi. I have a couple of questions. One, as you know, I'm going to school to become a master herbalist, and I heard you say vibrational. Help me with that word, please.
Vibrational.
Thank you. Food. And I was looking ahead in my chapters in my book last night, and I noticed that we're also going to be learning that in the next couple of semesters. And I was wondering what you meant by that. Maybe I can jump ahead in that class.
I don't remember when I said it, so I don't know the context of it. I mean, look, everything that exists vibrates. Okay, that we're all vibrational creatures, and the nature of our vibration makes us solid, or makes us liquid, or makes us gas, and all these other things. I mean, we're vibrational things. Okay, the sound we hear is vibrational. The visual stuff that we see is vibrational, and so even science is figuring out that that's how the creation of the universe was by sound, by vibration. Yahweh said, "Let there be light." He brought things into being, and so food, that we cook and process doesn't have a whole lot of life or vibration in it. Living food that you grow and you pick and haven't processed does. There's a lot to that, but I don't remember what I was talking about when I would have said it. Did I say it today? I don't remember saying that. So.
Okay, you say a lot of time, that's why, you should eat that type of food, and you made a mention a few times, but you didn't really elaborate on.
Okay. I think that the bigger connection is to fasting. Okay. Yeah. And that's probably the context I used to talk about it, is that, your vibrational level, your energy level, in terms of the vibrational level, affects your health, affects the susceptibility to, other creatures in your body causing harm or disease or anything else going wrong in your system. And, when you fast, you're purging out and not bringing in more of all of that stuff to allow you to come back into a vibration that can congruently tune into the Creator. Okay? And that's been what I've said in the past about fasting. And I use the analogy of the old school radios that you had to tune into a frequency. You eat all that fast food, dead food, cooked food, processed food. It's really not food. And you wonder why your vibrational frequency is so low. We talk about it. People say, man, I just feel like I'm low energy today. Well, because you're fueling it with low energy stuff. All right? And so you're vibrating, and your energy level, your frequency is very low. And so you're moving slow. And so that may have been what the context was. Go ahead.
Okay. The next question is, I have two more. One, in the book of Leviticus 11, it was talking about animals you can and cannot eat. I haven't read the rest of the Bible yet, but I'm assuming it doesn't mention anything of plants you can and cannot eat. Why animals and not plants?
He does mention in the beginning that the certain types of green vegetation is for food. Of course, there are green vegetation that will kill you. And so I don't know why he didn't give us that understanding in the written part. I grew up in a city we didn't have a lot of vegetation. I remember one of the first times we were at a different property that we were having Sukkot at, and it was out in the woods. And Rebbitzin took some of the children out on a little nature walk, and some of the children were basically from out in the woods. They were used to living out in the woods, and they knew what you can take and different berries that you could take and which ones would kill you or make you sick. And they grew up learning these things at a very young age. And where my wife was looking at them like, they all look the same. And they go, no, you see, this one has this thing and that thing, or this stripe, or this many leaves, or whatever it was. So they were taught. They did come to figure it out. I think part of the other problem is the vegetation that's bad for you causes a fairly quick adverse reaction, and so you'd figure it out pretty quick. Eating the things you shouldn't eat doesn't. Okay? You could eat pork. It's not going to do anything to you, most people. You could eat shellfish. You could eat any of that stuff. It's not going to necessarily have an immediate reaction unless you have an allergy to it, right? Which most people don't. But you eat some vegetation or berries or things that you shouldn't eat, you might get a very quick reaction.
Well, not all the vegetation's like that. The common herb, deadly nightshade, unless you take in a large amount, nothing will happen to you right away. But if you do it slowly over time, then it'll catch up to you.
Right.
Just
So
like
I'm saying that that's more the exception and less common. Okay? So that's my guess. I mean, there's nothing in Scripture to tell us why he says or doesn't say certain things. Okay?
Okay, and my last question is, when we were packing up to move up here, a brother had made it to my attention. I'm into crystals, but not as in like praying over them or things like that. I'm using them for healing properties, and I learned that in school too. There's a couple pyramids I had made with the crystals in them. What would you say about that? Get rid of them, or can I still use them since I'm not praying and worshiping over them?
Well, there's nothing to use them for. Then we're getting into the more new agey stuff and all that kind of thing. So, it's funny. I was at a conference one time, and there was some booths that people had that had some of these things at them. And a person grabs you and they say, "Come over here to my booth." They said, "Okay, what's going on?" They said, "You got a headache?" I said, "Yep." They said, "Here, hold this crystal." So I held it. Nothing happened. They said, "Here, okay, try this one." Nothing. After about 10 minutes, I said, "Oh, man, I feel great." Because they wouldn't stop. See, look, it works. No, I just have other things to do. Okay,
So can I keep them or get rid of them?
Look, let's talk about that. Look, I wouldn't have the pyramids, man. You guys remember pyramid power back in the 70s or whatever that was? Everybody thought pyramids did everything and healed everything and crystals. We're not into magic. We're not into all of that other stuff. Okay, crystals are natural rock formations. If you like them for the fact that it's a stone, and you collect rocks and that kind of thing, that's fine. Let's not think they're healing you. Let's not think that they're there for any kind of other property, and go in that direction. Okay, all right, Del, and then Rob. We're going to get you 2 or 3 in a row because I know we've been bouncing back and forth, and so I want to make sure we catch the live stream a little bit more.
In Numbers 12, it's talking about Miriam being shut outside the camp. Is that applicable today? What does that look like? And if it is applicable, I mean, you can use me as an example if you want to. So first, is it applicable today, and what does that look like?
All right, yes, this is applicable today. We do have a challenge with this because people don't want to behave with this. Okay, look, and I don't mean to stir it up with people that we're dealing with that are going through these things, but look, it says in chapter 12, verse 15, and Miriam was shut out of the camp 7 days, and the people did not set out until Miriam was remitted. Okay, now, okay? The key here is this. The leadership put her out for a reason, right? We had this little rebellion with Miriam and Aaron against Moses. And so Miriam was put outside the camp. And there's 2 pieces to this that's real important. One was that she was shut out. In other words, you weren't supposed to go see her, leave her. You were supposed to basically shun her. I don't want people shunning anybody, but she was shut out. You were not to go to her. And also, the leadership then had a process. The leadership readmitted her. Okay, so when she got readmitted, she was to be treated just like she was before she got thrown out, because the process was finished. Okay? So nobody was to hold anything against her or have any problem. She went out, did what she had to do, and came back. But it was, remember, leadership put her out, leadership readmitted her. But we have a challenge with this because we love people. and they're our friends, and sometimes it'll be one of those people that's either related to you or a friend of yours that gets put out. And this doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, it can be challenging. And yet, it never ceases to amaze me. All you guys are going over their houses and eating dinner with them and doing all these things. I'm saying, okay. But this is applicable today. This wasn't temple related. Why there's no temple. This is leadership said, you, for what you did, need to be out there. And yet, everybody then thinks, oh, leadership, where's your love? Where's your mercy? Where's your Christian mindset is what you're asking, right? It's his process. It's meant to be loving. It's meant so that they can come back and be fully restored and treated like they were before. To be readmitted means you are now fully back as a citizen in the camp, everything else, okay? And just like I would be very much willing to scold and correct any of you that were going to interact with the person who you shouldn't, who's outside the camp, I would just as much scold you if you were judging them when they came back. Because if they're back, they're back. Does that make sense to everybody so far? All right? So I would protect that just as much. But there's a process that they need to go through, and you're not helping by coddling or whatever else you're doing. Okay? Being outside the camp is supposed to suck. I've said that many times. Not because we want you to suffer. You did whichever you did to get there in the first place. Can we all admit that Miriam kind of brought this on herself, didn't she? Okay? She jumped out there, and she got in, Moses' face, and almost in Yahweh's face too. And so, outside the camp she went. But yet, it still amazes me. Because people are saying, oh, but, I don't want you to shun them. You run into them in the store, say hi. Tell them you miss them and love them and hope that they, complete their journey as fast as they can. Give them a hug, whatever. But we're not going and socially hanging out and, we're not doing what we do inside the camp, outside the camp. Does that answer your question, Del? Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm not telling you don't hold anything against them. They made a mistake, you make mistakes. They got caught, maybe you didn't. Maybe you did something worse. Love them, pray for them. If you're close to them, be there for them, meaning if they need someone to talk it through, process through as they're growing outside the camp. We're just not socially just hanging out and having a good time with people outside the camp. That's not the purpose of being put out. Okay, and they're not being put out so they never come back. They're being put out so that they do come back. I know that's hard for the people that are put out and the people that are in. And that's a test, by the way, because a lot of people, when they go out, they just don't handle it well and they just never come back. And then, of course, they want to blame whoever put them outside. I've put very few people out. But everybody I have put out, I can't tell you how disappointing it is how many of you just still don't get it. And you don't. And don't think I don't know. I see, it ends up on Facebook, and I see you all out at dinner or wherever you're going or at their house and everything, and I don't get it. But this is my friend, he's my this, she's my that, I know they are. This is Moses' sister, for crying out loud. Okay? That's why she gets used as an example. It's like of the highest level. You don't think people wanted to go out there and see how she was and make her feel better and comfort her and coddle her and everything else? No, she was shut out. Do your time. Then you can come back. Hopefully you learned your lesson and you're not going to do that again. That's the whole point. Which is why nobody gets shut out of the camp for like a day or 5 hours. It's not like a timeout. If it was, then you shouldn't be even put out because you didn't do anything bad enough to deserve that. But if it's bad enough to be put outside the camp, it's going to be a period of time so that you are absolutely very sure you're never doing that again. Because you realize how the consequences are just not worth it. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay? All right. But this is not a cultish control. It's used very, very rarely, only in strongest circumstances, with the hope and desire of full restoration to where everybody releases it, lets it go, and moves on, and just loves the person back in the camp. Amen? And you got to understand, I came from a place where the church I went to, they threw people out all the time. It was for almost anything. It was very cultish, very controlling. It was so bad. Let me tell you how bad it was. It was so bad. It's like a joke, right? How bad was it? Okay. It was all of a sudden on the Tonight Show. All right. So it was so bad that I went and visited a bunch of other nearby congregations of the same church that were, a few hours away in New Jersey, Long Island, wherever I was going, for like about 4 or 5 weeks in a row, because I found people my age that I could hang out with. I was having a great time. And when I came back, people came up to me who knew me, and they came up and whispered, what did you do? I go, what do you mean, what did I do? Well, you were thrown out, weren't you? Because anybody disappeared for 4 or 5 weeks must have been thrown out. That's how bad it was. So they said, what did you do? I said, I don't know, visited some people in New Jersey? Is that a problem? But they thought that maybe I had done something, and that probably goes to Ati's question, where their curiosity was like, what'd you do? Nothing. I was visiting people. I just wasn't here, So we don't use that very often, but it does apply today. Okay, next questions back over here. We'll try, we only gave life. You guys are asking like 3 at a time, and they asked 1. We're going to get some of these.
Okay, Kathleen Phillips and Samuel says, please speak on modest dressing, not only on Sabbath, but in a daily basis. That was from Kathleen. And Samuel was, what is your counsel on modesty in terms of dressing and character? Would this be a Torah issue?
Okay, it is a Torah issue, but it's a very challenging, culturally related issue. Because different cultures would see modesty very differently. And so we must look at it through the lens of where we are. Because what's the point of modesty? What is the issue? What's the point of modesty? Okay, it's to not cause the other, meaning the opposite sex, to be thinking of you or looking at you in an inappropriate way. Okay? But if we go to places like out in the woods or out in the jungles of some very warm place, you may find people walking around pretty well naked all the time, and it's not immodest. It's normal. So the amount of clothing is not the modesty issue. It's where you're wearing them or not that makes it the modesty issue. Okay? So what's appropriate with the culture and the people, knowing how people will look at you. I've known people that go to Europe. I've not been to these places, but I know people go to Europe, and they ended up on the beach, and then there's all these women walking around topless, and you know what? All the rest of the Europeans could care less. The Americans are doing this. And you know who the Americans are. They're all like, what? Because for them, it's not normal. Okay? So that would be immodest here as opposed to there. So, again, it's based on are you doing what you're doing to draw attention that you should not be drawing? And even if you're not doing it on purpose, look, if you're a lady and you're blessed, you should know that what you're wearing should be covered up well. Okay? You should know if you're showing more than you should be showing. Even if it's not your intent, but sometimes it is, the nature of the particular outfit. You should look in the mirror and say, what would a guy think looking at me? Where would his eyes go? Now, this is more of a challenge for the ladies than for the men, because the men have less modesty issues there, because we generally cover up the things that might be of that nature, unless, I guess, wearing like really tight jeans or some other thing. But it's a ladies thing more than a guy's thing, right? But think about, what attention am I trying to get? I remember laughing really hard. I was working in New York Life. I was selling insurance many, 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 many years ago. Add that to the list of the 5,000 jobs I've mentioned that I've had. And there was this adorable, 20-year-old girl who was somebody's assistant in the office who wore these really, really super short skirts. Then the guys in the office would look at her legs, and then she'd get mad. And I started laughing. I was like, Why are you mad? You put a neon sign with arrows pointing at your legs. And now you're shocked and upset that people are staring at them? Isn't that what you intended? And ladies will do the same thing. They'll wear stuff and then the guy's eyes go into the wrong places. But you gave him something to look at. Cover it up. His eyes won't go there. And then you act all shocked. Modesty is about respecting that you do not want to cause the other person to stumble, to look at you in an inappropriate way. Okay? And as I said, that's cultural to some degree. It's cultural, all right? Because I remember when I first got old enough and I went to beaches and I saw, okay, girls can be in bikinis on the beach, but if they wore their underwear, which probably covers more, that's no good. It's the same thing, same clothing, just painted differently or colored differently. You know, it's just designed, but it's the same. But it's cultural. We have this thing that this is okay, this is not okay. Learn your culture, learn what's appropriate. So inside the camp, we try to be modest. That doesn't mean that you have to get a ruler out to make sure your skirt shouldn't be more than this many inches from your ankles. I've seen places and been places with that, okay? But, actually, that might have been the right word there. Okay, in addition, all right, let's make sure that we're not causing someone to think of you in a sexual way, to get their thoughts in a sexual way because of the culture we live in. Okay? Because here, cleavage should not be shown. Now, that doesn't mean if your shoulder's exposed, well, that automatically, or an ankle's exposed. I don't know why everybody thinks that somehow, like, ankles are the sexiest thing in the world. I've never thought so, but it's not going to make some man stumble in his whole walk just because your ankle might be showing. But there is parts of your body that do need to be covered, okay? So let's just cover them up appropriately and make sure that we're not drawing the wrong attention. And so just use the mirror and say, okay, if I was looking at me, if I was a man, where would my eyes go? Where would my attention be? Would they cause the eyes to spend more than a second there and linger? I mean, you should understand what your clothing, because the clothing is designed to draw people's attention to or not to something. You ladies remember shoulder pads in all your dresses and whatever? That was to take the attention off of the big hips because it gave it more balance. Okay, narrow shoulders and wide hips didn't look as good, so they put shoulder pads on everybody. So that was to cause you to not look at something, draw your attention somewhere else. Modesty. Now, let me talk one more thing about modesty. This is important. We need to be compassionate when you see someone you think is being immodest. And what I mean by that is and I tell this story all the time because it happened, it's shocking. I wasn't apparently anywhere in the room to see this, but I heard about it. But a lady walked in the congregation with her 15-year-old, whatever she was, young teenage girl, who happened to be fairly voluptuous apparently and was wearing a fairly short skirt and showing a lot of skin. And the ladies of the congregation literally attacked the girl, threw a blanket over her jackets or whatever, and just mortified the poor girl. Okay? These are the first time they came to our congregation. And I was not happy. I was like, you know what? You could have brought them off to the side, helped them understand, maybe offered something, whatever. There's ways to have handled this so that maybe, hey, okay, well, you know what? By the way, every guy in every congregation can handle one day with somebody showing up inappropriately. Just fix the problem next time. Okay? Nobody's walk is going to get completely ruined because you were immodest one time. So we don't have to panic because somebody walked in a little immodest. But we can have the ladies or the elders talk to them and say, you know what, where we are here in our walk, we encourage people to do this and this. So next time, please, take that into consideration when you get dressed. But we shouldn't embarrass somebody. They don't know. They're coming from wherever they're coming from. Be glad now maybe they'll learn how to be more modest. Does that make sense to everyone, okay? Because otherwise you can, and don't do the Lashon Hara thing that like Jonathan brought up, which is, oh, could you see what she's wearing? Can you believe that? Look at all that skin she's showing. Oh, she's just getting all the guys' attention. Ladies, don't do all of that. If you think something's inappropriate, bring it to someone who has authority to actually deal with it. Okay? So if in this case, the teenage girl, I would have gone to the mom. And I would have said, can I have a conversation with you? I just want you so you can be successful here. I know that you're a guest, but this is something that we, would like, if you're going to keep coming in the future, that we can address it, It's not a big deal today. Don't worry about it. Okay, but, Did that make sense to everyone? Did you get that? Because we could really cause somebody who came in the first time to just run out screaming because we judge them. Okay? And by the way, remember when I said that one time how there was a lady on a stage and I knew she had her husband there and her father there and the pastor was there and everything else, and people were like, plenty of people that could set her straight if they needed to. This girl came in with her mother. Her mother thought it was fine. Her mother has eyes, saw her daughter get dressed, saw her get in the car, drive to the congregation. So they were not thinking there was a problem here. Some of you, I don't know what it's like in your churches where you came from, but churches I drive by when I'm on Sunday afternoon going to the store or something and I see the people going in and out of the churches, some of them look like they're going to a nightclub. They're dressed to kill. And so maybe they went to a church like that before they found us, where that's appropriate. It's acceptable, whatever. Okay? But we should be modest. We should not be trying to draw the attention of the opposite sex in a sexual way. They should be drawn to your personality, to who you are in Him. We don't need to draw them with our bodies. Okay? Dress nice. Clean yourself up, as I said, and you can clean yourself up real good. Talked to the singles yesterday. Dress nice. Be attractive in an appropriate, modest way. The best way to do it is if the person that you're talking to, first and foremost, is noticing your face and looking you in the eye and not looking at all the other stuff. That's not where their attention should be. Amen? All right. Actually, here's a funny little side thing. So, guys, when you start wearing tzitzit, you'll start to know what the ladies feel. Because you'll talk to somebody whose eyes are not looking you in the eye anymore because they're looking at your tzitzit. Ladies notice when you look somewhere else, and you think they don't. Oh, yes, they do. Because I talk to people, and they're staring at my tzitzit, and they want to ask a question. They don't always do. Sometimes I have to say to them, it's okay, you can ask. Because I know they're looking at my tzitzit. But I know what they're doing. I'm looking at them, and they're looking at my tzitzit. You're looking at the woman, but you're not looking her in the face. She knows. But ladies, you got to be thinking, did I give him reason to look anywhere else? It's not just his fault. Okay? And so, if he's got a bunch of flesh to look at, he's a man. He can't help himself. He's going to look. Don't give him anything to look at. Don't just get mad at him. Yahweh made us to notice you and gave you those parts to draw our attention. Cover them up until it's appropriate. It's only appropriate at home, together, in a marriage. Okay? All right. Robert. We'll go to Rob Wyatt because I know we kind of go back and forth, but we really don't. For every two here, we get maybe one there.
Okay, from Anna Uden. Says, Rabbi, other than the obvious reason, can you explain why we have to get circumcised physically, asking in my husband's stead?
Look, there are things that we do simply because he said so, right? He said this is a sign in the flesh of the covenant. So why do you have to get circumcised? Because he said so. All right, next question.
Okay, it's a little long, but from Madeline Mesner Roloff says, do you know the Father and the Son teaching in Ezekiel 37:21 through 28, especially in verses 23 through 24, the speaker is Yahweh, pointing out a separate entity to rule the nation in the millennium. Since Yahweh speaks of his servant, David/Messiah, ruling, the speaker therefore seems to be the Father. David, Messiah, is the Son, and Ezekiel is writing down what the Father is saying about sending his Son to rule. If Yahweh is Yeshua in the Old Testament and the Father never spoke to people in the Old Testament, how do we make sense of these verses?
Okay. Hi, Madeline. Down in South Africa there. Okay, look, the things that I've said about the Father and the Son, I said, look, the Father hasn't been here. And I said that in the Old Testament, I said it actually today. In the Old Testament, most of the time, you're hearing the Son speak. Now, but when you hear the Son speak, aren't you still hearing the Father speak? Because the Son has told you he only says what his Father tells him to say. So here he is speaking to Ezekiel and telling him this prophetic vision of what's coming in the future, which could also be speaking about himself, which is what he was also doing when he spoke to Moses and said, I'm going to raise one up like unto you. And eventually that was pointing to Yeshua himself. And so it could easily be either one here. And like I said, there may be moments in the Old Testament when it is the Father, but the majority of it, the vast majority, is the Son. And to go ahead and try to parse out exactly who's who, where's where, I don't think that the verses really lend themselves very easily to figure that out. But for the consistency of the way he's shown me that this all works out, that's the message he kind of gave me. So there's no problem here with the Son talking about himself in a future sense when he refers to himself as, while David my servant is sovereign over them in verse 24, and they shall have one shepherd and walk in my rulings, etc. I mean, here in the form of Yahweh, remember, he hasn't put on a flesh suit yet. He's not a child from the lineage of David yet. He's not. None of those things are true yet. But he's talking about how this will be in the future. So it certainly could still be Yeshua speaking. Okay? Next one. We'll give you one more, and then we'll go to Daniel.
Okay, from MTOI Philippines, Jet Singh says, Rabbi, would it be bad or in any way if someone tagged you as very strict in keeping Torah? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this has something to do with Torah pursuant and observant?
I can't say I understood the question. I mean, I understood what you said, but I didn't understand what the actual question is. Some sort of problem with being called or tagged with a line?
I'm saying if someone, I guess, maybe that's someone, I mean, probably somebody just maybe
calling you
out that you're just very strict in keeping Torah. You know, as a bad thing.
I'd like to hope somebody would think that of me, right? I mean, isn't that what you want to hear? Is, man, you're strict at keeping that Torah. With every breath I've got, you know. Amen and amen. Okay? All right, Daniel.
Hi, Rabbi. I just
Hi.
wanted to ask a question about counting the Omer. Are we supposed to be doing that?
Yes, we are. So what day are we in? Okay, day 4, day 5, day 6. I saw a couple of hands. So hands go up, and was it 4s or 5s? We started Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Day 4. All right. Now, when you're asking that question, the question is, are we supposed to be every day announcing the counting? No. It's not required anywhere. You are to count 50 days to know when Shavuot is. All right? You have to count 50 days to May 17th to Shavuot. That's what you need to do. Now, should we be announcing it? We used to. Sometimes we do something. I mentioned it yesterday. I didn't mention it today. So thank you for reminding me, so we can announce it. But just so you know, you are required to count. You need to know what day it is. So I should be able to come up to anybody along the count and go, what day is today? You go, day 4. Okay? You need to know. That's important. That's what it says here. Count 50 days. And the reason that you have to count 50 days is because he's not giving you a date. He's telling you when you wave sheaf, then you count 50 days to the harvest that you come in fully, which is Shavuot. Okay? But thank you for bringing it up, because I do forget sometimes to mention what day it is, as I keep my own count, but to bring it up into at the service here. Next question on this side.
Hi, Rabbi. So my question is about Sharon Hara. Lashon Hara. Thank you. So when we talk about other people and try to kill their character out loud, that's lashon hara. But what about if we're thinking about someone, thinking badly about someone, or just even just thinking about something about someone, and we don't know if it's true. We're not talking about it to anyone else, but we're talking about it to ourselves. That's lashon hara too, right?
Sure.
Like,
Look,
yeah.
you got to take those thoughts into captivity, especially, look, I used to call this like an Olympic problem for us because we were all gold medal conclusion jumpers. Be careful that you're thinking something about somebody and you really don't know what it is, but you've jumped to a conclusion. So now in your mind, they did whatever you think they did, even though you don't know. Okay? And be really, really careful about that, because you can get yourself all in a mindset and now treat them a certain way, and later only to find out it wasn't true. But you jumped to that conclusion and got it wrong. Anybody ever jump to a conclusion and get it wrong? Okay. Any chance that'll happen again? All right, so let's be careful with that because it's likely to happen. Okay, what else?
Yeah. No, that was it.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Rob, you got another one? We got about 30 minutes and we're going to have dance class.
Okay. I've got about 40 or 50 of them. So.
All right, well, let's get a couple of them here.
Okay, from Nina Angelina says, can you explain Genesis 1 verse 26? It is stated, let us. So thanks. I think you want to know what that let us is.
Okay. Lettuce is something I put on my hamburger with tomatoes and some onions. It's really good. Chapter 1 and verse 26. Okay, so I do explain this in the Father and the Son teaching. The beginning, before all of it's finished, you have the Father and the Son working together. Okay, so you have that, in the team of the two of them are doing everything. That's why up to this point, you've not seen Yahweh's name anywhere. It says Elohim. You don't see Yahweh's name till chapter 2, okay? So, and that's only when man starts to be there to interact with, which goes back to the Son has been the one that interacts with us, all right? But when the Father and the Son are working together here in chapter 1, not everywhere will you just see Elohim, but that's why you always hear the words, I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Remember, Elohim is also used for the pagan deities. But here in the beginning, and Elohim said, let us make man. And Elohim created man in his image. And Elohim said, see, I have given every plant. Elohim. That's all the Father and Son together. Okay? So next question. Oh, you got one back there, Daniel? Okay. Real quick with Michelle, and then we'll go to you.
Okay, Rabbi, this one is off of what Ashley was talking about with the stones. I know I've called you and asked your permission about Reiki, and it's not like the Buddha stuff or doesn't get into New Agey. It's actually someone on this walk that does it according to, she actually wears the
Okay, but
tzitzit.
did I answer your question when you called me?
Yes, but what I want to ask is about the stones.
What about the stones?
So we're not to wear the stones or...
Look, people wear all kinds of stones as jewelry. That's fine. It's a matter of what you think the stones are doing and all of that makes the stones appropriate or not appropriate.
Like chakra stones and stuff like that. I was asking mostly.
No. Okay? Okay? All right, Rob?
Gloria Smith, what is the true biblical perspective of hell or Gehenna?
Let's save that for when I do the Millennium and Kingdom remake and include in it that whole part. Okay? But just let me answer what I think is probably what's going on here. And by the way, I just told all of you not to jump to conclusions, but I'm going to make a guess here. Look, the bottom line is that when you talk about hell or Gehenna and you talk about the fire and that kind of stuff, we're not talking about a place of, like Dante's Inferno, which is really where the whole Catholic Church shifted everybody's thinking into the way we think of hell today in the churches came from a book, you know, and not the Bible being the book either, but Dante's Inferno. But the thing is, the idea is that this is not a situation where the God we believe in, the Creator we believe in, is going to torture people forever. Why would you worship that being? That sounds like Hasatan. Well, yeah, he's the one that's down there doing the torturing. But then it says that Yahweh's the one sending him down there, is the way it looks when you read it. He's merciful and compassionate. And so he's going to do what he did with other evil ones, like swallow them up in the ground and they were gone. Okay? To have them get zapped. Like, you know, people do the things they do. They get zapped. They get the ground opening up. They don't get tortured and burned or whatever it is that we want to think of. That is a tool of the Catholic Church to scare the whatever out of you so that you'll give them money and do whatever they want you to do. Okay? So that hopefully mostly answers that question. But it's, you know, we have a lot of verses to go through all of that. All right? Back there.
Thank you, Rabbi. I want you to help me understand this. And it has actually been bothering my mind, and that is the book of Yohanan 14:23. Answer him, if anyone loves me, he shall guard my word, and my Father shall love him, and we shall come to him and make our stay with him. So my question is that I have a lot of friends who are pastors, who are prophets, and all that. And most of them, especially when I was in the foreign service, and I have a lot of friends who in business world, who are actually in academics world. And when things are not going properly with them or for them, or something happens whereby they lose their child or something just terrible happened to them, the first question that comes to them, is that it's because they did not answer the call of God. That God called them, they did not answer that call on time into the ministry. That is why that terrible things happened to them. Before I came to Torah, because I had a personal experience in coming to Torah, I used to look at it in this way. Why would God be so wicked, I'm sorry to use that word, to kill your son or your daughter or destroy your business because you did not answer the call on time? But then when I came to the Torah and I studied the scripture very well, I discovered that it is not in agreement with what the Torah said. My question is this, sir. Is it possible for Elohim or Yeshua to call you, and because you're reluctant not to answer his call, to kill your son or your daughter or destroy your business before you answer that call? Then is it possible for Yeshua to call you to disobey him? Because a lot of them go to the seminary after this incident happened to them. And they come out to become pastors, to become an evangelist, to become a reverend. So my question is that, is it possible, in agreement with this scripture, is it possible for Yeshua or the Father himself to call you into the ministry for you to disobey him, for you to keep Sunday service, and for you to actually disobey him in all aspects? Is that the call or something else? Thank you.
All right, it's good that you finished with that because it was going to be, my answer was going to start off with, I don't understand, the question, it doesn't make sense because you're asking if something is a call that Yeshua would never do. Okay? He's not going to call you into pastor, prophet, evangelist in mainstream Christianity. That's not happening. All right? He's not going to call you into any of that mess and cause you to go to seminary and Sunday and Easter and Christmas and all of the laws done away with and sloppy agape and grace and all that stuff. So that's all what the world teaches and the church wants you to believe. Look, you know what it looks like when the very few people in our book resist what Yahweh wants? They get swallowed by a big fish. And that only happened once. People generally that he chooses don't run away. They don't generally fight the call. And so what they're doing is they're trying to justify as an excuse some outside source is the reason for their loss, their problem, their challenge, or whatever it is. And that's really, damaging to them and to people around them because people then start to believe it and buy into it. My business, I lost my business. Well, maybe it's because you ran it poorly. Oh, no, it's because I didn't hear Yahweh's call. I was supposed to be a pastor. All right? I lost my child. Well, maybe you never thought it, but then somebody else who's in that Christian main thinking goes up to you, well, you were called to be, and you didn't, so God took your child. Shame on that person for talking like that. But people do. Oh, I had people tell me because of things that I was teaching or going through whatever, well, that's why you don't have children. And then immediately I had children. So much for whatever they knew. Okay? And so we got to be very careful with it. But no, the answer is, first of all, Yahweh would never do that. He would not take your child because he called you. He would call you. Why does he call you? All of you. Why does he call you? Because he knows that you can do what he's called you to do from where you are and knows your response in advance. That at least you will make the effort up to a point. He just, he wants you to play out the whole, see if you go all the way to the end. So that's why I don't ever, I used to love this in the church. They used to be, anybody that wants to be a pastor isn't qualified. That's ridiculous. Okay, I wasn't thinking I wanted this job, but when he called me to do it, I said, great, I'd love to do it. I like this job. I want this job. This is what look, it's like if someone said to my daughter, hey, would you like to sing? Well, yeah, that's all I do is sing. Okay, well, would you like to teach? And yeah, that's all I do. I like to do this. So it's not a reluctancy when he calls you and knows that you were designed and anointed to do it. Okay? The only thing you had is the one attitude problem with Jonah because Jonah didn't want to go do it over there with those people. He was already doing the job. He just didn't want to go over there to do it. He said, those people in Nineveh, do you know what they do and what they're like? That's what he was thinking, Send me anywhere, just don't send me there. Yahweh said, you go wherever I send you. I'm in charge, not you. You work for me. It's not the way this works. You don't get to decide where I send you. You go where I send you. By the way, that should be something for all of you. You guys want to be in ministry? You want to come up the ranks? You want to be a shamash, like a deacon? You want to be an elder? Then you should be ready to do whatever the person above you asks you to do. Well, I wanted to be this, but I wasn't intending to do that. Sorry, never asked you what you wanted. Okay? You were called to do this, and this is what it is today. Tomorrow may be something else. In 5 minutes, it may be something else, but this is what I need you to do right now. And that's what Yahweh says. You work for me, this is what I need you to do. Go do this now. But I don't want to do that. This isn't going to work for us. You might end up having to be swallowed by a big fish. All right? To get your attention. And you could use the metaphor of the big fish. So what happened when he was swallowed with the big fish? He was taken away from everybody. He was isolated and alone. Pretty much was going to die. Like Job, he had everything taken away. I mean, different reasons, different tests, but do you understand what I'm saying? You could lose everything if he really calls you. But it's you losing it. He's doing it to you. He's not going to take your innocent child because you didn't decide to take a career working for him. Why did he punish Jonah? Because Jonah had the career and didn't want to do it the way Yahweh said. You want to, this is what you do? I'm sending you over here. I don't want to go over there. What does that have to do with it? That's the way it works, is I send you, you go. End of story. Okay? So good question, appreciate that. But we got to remember, you can't use those phrases like, well, but God, if God called them to this, but he didn't. Not that person to do those things. Okay? Look, I told this story earlier. It didn't go on live stream, and I'm going to tell it here anyway, just so we can get that in there. You know, I was watching a Paul Wilbur. I don't mind calling him out. He needs to be called out. All right? I was watching him do a concert at a congregation nearby, and about an hour and 20 minutes, and he stops in between every so many songs and gives mini sermons, which is fine, you know. But he was telling a story about how the mainstream Christian church he's been going to forever, or different, you know, he's always been in a mainstream Sunday church, that they were doing a Passover-related thing. He got to get up and teach a little bit about it. They really weren't doing it, but he was teaching, explained a little bit about the unleavened bread and the kiddush and the motzi. And of course, he said the amazing thing was it wasn't only Passover, but it was Good Friday. I said, goodness, what are you learning? But see, this is who we sing his songs and dance to his songs and everything, and the guy doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. But here's the thing he said that was the interesting point. He said that at some point, long story short, the pastor of this mega church is handed a piece of matzah, is staring at it, and he's quiet, and Paul's calling him, he's not answering, and he's trying to talk to him, he's not answering. And come to find out, later the pastor says to him, what was happening was Jesus was standing next to me on the platform teaching me blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I'm sure Jesus was. Yeshua was nowhere in sight. But, you know, because that church is still doing Easter Sunday next Sunday. They're still doing all of those things. That's 3 years ago that this happened. And yet, like what you were talking about, these people feel like, oh, and you know what? The Messianic congregation that he was sharing this at, they're all applauding the whole time. I'm like, you think it was Good Friday? You think he died on Friday? And, oh, he was also talking about passing out the elements of communion at that congregation as he's teaching them about the Last Supper. He got everything about it wrong. Last Supper wasn't Passover. It wasn't communion. That's a Catholic thing and all this other stuff. And then Jesus showed up and stood on the platform next to his mega pastor. And people are just buying into all this stuff. You have to have enough understanding and discernment to know what did or did not happen. Now, you may not always know what did, but you certainly can know what didn't happen. It's like when I used to tell people coming to me, oh man, the Shekinah glory would just fall in our church. And I said, no, it didn't. Oh, how dare you say that? How do you know? Because you're alive. Because if it did, you'd all be dead. Because there are protocols for that none of you have done. Which is why we don't pray for that to happen here. We'd all be dead. Not because we're awful sinners, just because we're not tameh. I mean, we're not tahor, we're all tameh. We're not clean enough for that ritual for us to be. And only certain people, certain times a year, in certain places, we're allowed to do that. Oh no, it happened. In my church, it would fall every Sunday. I don't know what was falling in every Sunday, but it certainly wasn't that. And they get mad at me. How dare you? Online, there are people freaking out right now. How dare you? That's what the book says. It's not my opinion. You get all upset. Look, are you what it says, people of the book or children of the word? Those of the way? Covenanted Israelites? Then you should know better. And sit there and buy into these signs and oh, he was with him on the stage on Good Friday. Goodness. Really? I mean, I sat there not believing what I was listening to. You go listen to it. It's an hour and 20 minutes in. And so, It was sad because he could have been so much more valuable to the body, wrote some nice songs, played other people's songs really beautifully, and just, he's a Christian. I'm not saying that like it's a terrible thing, but he's pretending to be something else. And he leads people to think he's something else. And some of you are thinking, he went to a Sunday church all these years. All these years. He was the praise leader of one, and a big one at one point. I'm not picking on him for it. I know he doesn't eat clean, at least he didn't years ago, because I went to a concert he did, and he was raising money for a trip. He was going overseas to like some, backwoods South America or, central, something out in away from the cities. And he said, oh yeah, they're going to feed me lizards and this and that and everything else, and you don't want to go there and eat that stuff, but I'll do it or whatever. He basically said he eats whatever they put in front of him. Because after all, Paul said, whatever they put in front of you, eat it with thanksgiving. So I'm, these are things that you wake up and go, so disillusioning to realize what I thought wasn't what it was. And I'm not trying to attack him or anything like that, but, he holds himself out in such a big way. And his little mini sermons are trying to get everybody, we're special, we're chosen, we're to listen and obey his word, and he doesn't do any of it. Well, he's not those pieces that I'm aware of anyway. And this is the mixed mess you and I are all trying to battle against. All right? And I don't know how people then leave here. I mean, if you leave here and find something else like this, that's fine. But where are you going to find that? You're going to find another flavor of Hebrew roots Christianity. Christianity with some Hebrew flavor. And maybe their Saturday and their feast keeping, but there's still all this Christianity is all mixed in it. And there's no way to justify that as being appropriate and okay. All right? Not from the people. You're new. You might still have a mix. But from the microphone, there's no justification for that. All right? And you should not be excusing it. When you listen to people and you start to hear it, change the channel. I don't know what else to say. You're listening along. Oh, that's good. Okay, he's right. Okay, that was right. Good, good. What? Run it back. What'd he say? Run it back. Okay, done. You don't need that mix. It's hard enough. I got people all the time telling me, oh, this guy, he's just like you. I go listen to him. I said, really? Did you listen to what he said? He's just like me. Okay. Had a New York accent like me, so he's like me. Pay attention to the words. Is it a mixed mess, or what are you getting out of it? Very important, because, you can hear what the gentleman back here said, and he was talking about family members really distraught, because the verse says, those who love me, right? It says, if anyone loves me. Of course, the next verse says, he shall guard my commands. Okay, so then so much for loving him. It's not just loving him. All Christians love him in the context they understand. But it says, who love me, he shall guard my word. That's how you express the love. Oh, I'm not doubting that when you were a Christian and Christians today love him. Very strong in their emotions, a lot of them are very strong in their emotions. They just have no idea how to express it. And that's not their fault necessarily. I'm not picking on them. I gave Paul some grief because he holds himself out there for the public. You're going to be in public, you're a target that's allowed to be shot at, okay? You get to get called out. I'm in public, people call me out all the time. And so that's fine. But just, you should know. Because I watched that yesterday, and because I thought I could listen to I thought I'd like to listen to some of his music, see how he can sing. He's getting a little older, I wanted to see if he could still sing. And, for the most part, he sang pretty good. But the mini sermons told me everything I needed to know about where he's at and where the group he was talking to was at. And I know a lot of people in that group going, really? You can stand there and sit there and listen to that? After listening to me, what I taught you? I was shocked. And every time he'd say that stuff, they're all like, yay, amen, amen. I keep seeing that remnant get smaller and smaller. Playtime's over. All right? I don't even think there ever was playtime, but at least I can tell you it's over now. We're either serious or we're not. All right. I just took up all the question time. Okay, where was the mic for the next person? Okay, over here. Jonathan.
About Paul Wilbur, I used to listen to a lot of his music.
I like his music, and a lot of it's written by other people, but I like the way he sang it and everything, sure.
And Paul Baloche. I didn't praise Adonai.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that he was not messianic, from what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
And so that came as a surprise. But that was not my question. So earlier...
Well, that's because you raised your hand before I went on my rant, and now that gave you something to say. Okay, what's your question?
Earlier today in this, I believe you mentioned the kings of Israel. They were, and the people were advised not to wear, men do not wear women's clothes, and women do not wear men's clothes. I have a big problem on unisex clothing. This is a sincere question. I'm not trying to cause...
No, I understand.
Or anything like that. There's some clothes that are unisex. I wonder, I said, are they more for women than they are for men? And so it causes some confusion. I'm wearing these are Converses. Both sexes can wear them. I have no problem with the shoes, but when it comes to the clothing, I am more judgmental, and I don't know whether I should put that on or not.
Okay, so let's understand there's two issues here, all right? The first issue is that the verse is talking about those things that pertain to, which can mean things beyond just clothing, okay? And the second issue is, with the clothing issue, or the other piece of this is that we're not to cause any, and we're in a society where this is a big deal, any gender confusion. So it's not so much there are items that either sex could wear, but is it going to, when I look at you, hinder my ability to tell which one you are? Okay? And there's a lot of that happening now in the men's clothing that was not in the men's clothing, it was in the women's clothing, as opposed to the other way around. There was a lot more of that in the past, where a lot of men's type of stuff was showing up in the ladies' area. Now it's the other way around. Okay? And we're seeing some of that. But really it has to do with, if I see you, I should know which one you are. Now back then, they didn't have, pants versus dresses versus, because a lot of the Baptists and these other churches go, well, the ladies have to wear dresses. Well, nobody wore a dress back in the day. They all wore robes of some sort. There weren't any dresses like that. All right? But clearly the men's looked a little different in some way than the women's, and there was ways to tell who was what. And it was about the gender confusion. Because you got to understand, they had male and female prostitutes in the temples. And the male prostitutes, would veil their faces, which is what Paul was actually talking about. He says, it's not that it's a shame for men to cover their heads. It actually says veil their faces, which is the male prostitute sort of thing, to hide the fact that they're a man. Okay? Of course, the men coming in looking for them knew that they were getting a man, but it was just the game they were playing. And so I can understand where you're coming from, because this is becoming more and more prevalent, harder to catch in some ways because it's becoming more common. And so it's not like ladies can't wear pants, and because ladies' pants generally, at least in the past, did not look like men's pants. Didn't fit like men's pants. They looked different, fit different. If you saw somebody in them, you would know that's a lady versus that's a guy. Same thing with button shirts. Ladies have button shirts, blouses, and we have button shirts. But they're different. Not so much anymore, but used to be. So it's not about that. A lot of you are all wearing these MTOI shirts like I'm wearing. Which way do I have the camera here? Okay, so I'm wearing the MTOI shirt. And so you're wearing MTOI shirts. And these are unisex. We didn't say men's shirts versus ladies' shirts. But they don't look the same on you as they look on me. We're not trying to confuse anybody. That's really more what the scripture is about. Okay, causing the confusion in that area. And what's the world doing more than anything else at the moment? Running as fast as they can into gender confusion. Okay, at full speed, as fast as they can go. And so we see that playing out. All right? So those are the two things. It's one that has to do with more gender confusion. The other one has to do with there are things that are for men that are not for the women, and things for the women that are not for the men. Let's kind of keep those things clear. And I'm not talking about like ladies need to be in the kitchen and men need to be. No, it had to do with things like it could have had to do with like the tefillin, which is the phylacteries like the Jews would wear, like binding the sign on their hands and frontlets between the eyes. Certain things that were for men and not for the women. Whatever that may have been armor, and the ladies fought, but it may have had to do with the armor. It was just understanding that there was things for men and things for women. Okay? No prejudice there, no chauvinism there, just there were things for the men and things for the women. And they wanted to make sure that they weren't getting those things confused. Okay? All right, where are we now? Okay, over here, Deirdre.
Thank you, Rabbi. In Genesis 1:26, Yahweh says, let's make man in our own image. Does that mean that when we were originally created, we were species Elohim, and sin turned us into what we are now?
The way I've answered that in the past, it was not asked that way. The way I've answered is that when it talks about when they sinned, when they messed up and he catches them in the garden, he says that he made skins for them. Right, so we think he took animal skins and made skins for them, but it could have been that they were light beings that were given skin to put over that at that point. So that's a speculation that we could work with. I'd have to, take it only as a speculation.
Okay. Expanding off of that, when Moshe went into the presence of Yahweh, it says that his face, shone. I have heard a theory that because the shining was a result of his DNA being changed because he was in the presence of Yahweh?
I have no idea. The book doesn't tell us any of that, so.
Okay. And then the last one kind of expands off of Grayson's question. We dealt with Enoch. When Peter, James, and John go up the mountain with Yeshua, they see Moses and Elijah. How did that work? What was the truth about that?
How does it work in terms of what?
I mean, I was always taught that the only three people have ever gone to heaven: Enoch, Moses, and Elijah. And we dealt with the whole Enoch thing. We don't know.
No, I think that the reason that you see them there in the vision is because it really has more to do with people's expectations of end times and Yeshua being a heralder of the end times and that kind of thing, more than the other part that you might be going with the fact that, these are the three that went to heaven. All right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, we pretty much are just about at 5 o'clock. You got any one more, Rob, or we good there? Or? We're never going to have everybody get their questions in because we're running out of time. But
no real quick ones. I mean,
did you want to just get yours in real quick? Was there one hand here? All right, we'll squeeze one more in. Is that okay, Sarah Beth? She's waiting to do her class. All right, go ahead.
I'll keep it simple. Does doing more mitzvahs get me better placement in Kingdom Come?
You'll have to talk to HR.
Thought you were HR.
No, I just talk a lot. HR is a whole different department. We'll see how your ledger's looking with accounting. No, look, there's no earning those kind of things, but you do bring a reward for your efforts, and what you get is going to be what you deserve based on your efforts in terms of obedience and compliance. That's why we have parables of the talents and things like that, where you see the one who did this much with it, they got that much back, etc. He wants you to just do the best you can with what you have, and you'll be so happy with what you get. Okay, you'll get what you're supposed to get, and that's fine. But as far as having more incentive, I don't know why we would need any more incentive than eternal life and that kind of a thing. But if you want more incentive for doing more gets you more, well, we do have a parable that says doing more gets you more, whatever that means, okay? So keep doing as much as you can, the best you can, and just, hit it as hard as you can, all right? Okay, well, hope that was useful and good for everybody. All right, so As we go to close here, just a reminder, we got dance class and then praise practice right after that. The dancers are welcome to stay for the praise practice so you can continue dancing. I was thinking that I should remind you also at this point, we have been talking about it, and we'll try to find a time when we can do it, but we do have a plan at some point to do a marathon Midrash, okay? Where we're just going to start and go like all day and all night or whatever. We're just going to try and do a 24-hour Midrash of some sort and catch all the time zones and zone 2, zone 3, and all of that stuff. I'll need a lot of hot tea for my aching throat, but we'll get it done. And maybe at Shavuot. By the way, we are thinking about, how many of you would be interested in coming? We're thinking about a Friday through Monday Shavuot celebration because it's on Monday. All right. Excellent. We'll have to see what we could do to get that worked out because it's Monday this year on the 17th of May, and we can just have everybody get here Friday, have a nice long weekend, maybe do the marathon in the middle of all that. Who knows? We could try to do a mikvah in a nicer weather on a Sunday. Because you have the Sabbath, then we'll have Sunday off, and then Monday will be the holy day. And so we'll see what we can do for that. All right, we'll get back to you about that hopefully within a week or so when we get finished with this. Right away, we'll let everybody know because you'll need time to plan for it if you can come down for that. All right, I need someone to close us in prayer. All right, give it to Rob right in front of you. Rob, you got your own.
All right, I got my own. All right, Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for another great day of getting fed your word and being taught by our Nasi, our Rabbi Steve. Just hold him up and his family up, and that we continue to stay healthy, to be here for us, and just everybody else. Just as we go out, and that we just. Well, I'm just losing my train. That we get fed this word, that this refreshes us this week, that we're here as a family, that knowing that we are doing what we know that Rabbi tells us is right, and that he is right for us. Father, in Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. And look, I'm going to say something so that it gets the value. See how Rob struggled there? Nobody should worry about that. He's praying. Where none of us is, thinking it's an embarrassing thing. So if you're reluctant to pray because you're afraid you're going to do that, there was nothing wrong with that, is what I'm trying to say. So don't be afraid to pray. Men should raise their hand because I trip over my tongue all the time. And so you lose your thought. It's nothing wrong with that. So I appreciate Rob doing that just to make you guys feel better if you were thinking of raising your hand someday. All right? All right. Also, don't forget, I'm doing counseling tomorrow afternoon, so see Billy Jackson to get on that list. All right. Shalom, everyone. We'll see you in the morning for the next scripture reading and the last day of reading the book of John.